Well, this is is this our 20th year? I think it is, right? This is our 20th year. And I think we have, 179 people total in the company now. And there's a lot of people here I don't think I actually know. So my name's Bob Skana. I'm the CEO of Rajant. And so welcome to this event. What do we have, 155, I think, ladies? 155 people from all around the world. It's really pretty spectacular. When we first started the company, I think it was Paul and me and one or two other folks, I think Dave, and maybe that was it. I think there were two or three of us. So it's come a long way. So my job is to give you the state of Rajant, welcome you and give you the state of Rajant. And I did have I think a 75-page prepared speech done by our crack marketing staff, but I don't think you want me to inflict that on you. So we're just going to have a conversation today and talk about what's happened with the company. I have a quick question. So I would like a show of hands. How many people have been here less than a year? Wow. How about less than 2 years? Geez. So there's a whole lot of people kind of new to Rajant. So I thought I'd take a little bit of time, weave in some of the notions about our culture, which are a little different in some ways, a lot of different other ways than other companies, and kind of has allowed us to succeed. A little background on success in startups. I think the failure rate is astonishing in startups. It's generally about 90% of companies fail, and for all kinds of reasons. And so this is a pretty unique group in that respect. There's another stat I like to talk about as well. So 90% of startups fail. Probably half of those fail within the first year. I think most of them fail for a really fundamental reason. They make a product people don't want, and that's probably the prime reason. But there are so many other reasons. One of the biggest reasons is one somehow we magically overcame when we sold our first technology to a mining company. That was the Kennecott copper mine. It was in, I think, guys, 06, 07, thereabouts. One of the biggest challenges that any startup has is it's small by definition, and most big companies, when they're confronted with a product from a small company, they have really rational reasons for being reluctant to do business with a small company, which is, can you support this? Will you be around to service this? Can we depend upon you? Can we rely upon you? There's always somebody on the other side of that transaction, right? There's a buyer, and that person has a job, and they have a boss, and they have obligations, and they're looking at you going, are you going to put my job in jeopardy if we buy your stuff? So we were probably then a 20-person company selling a technology to probably a $50 billion company. It was Rio Tinto, the mining company. And the operation itself is about $1.5 billion in revenue in Salt Lake City, where we sold this technology to. So we were confronted with a $1.5 billion local operation as part of a $50 billion multinational operation, considering buying technology from a 20-person company in Malvern, Pennsylvania, that they would run their $1.5 billion operation in a way that would be dependent upon our technology. So that was the decision they were confronted with. And why would any sensible person do that? Right? I mean, if you were on the other side, you'd have to, we could just go to Cisco or, any other. Motorola, I think, were the two big choices that the company had as an alternative at the time. Why would they do that? Why would they choose us? And yes, our technology was uniquely different, but that ultimately is less important to that customer and that buying decision. And really what it was the fanatical focus of the development team. They were simply unwilling to let that project fail, whether it was Dave Acker or Paul and Marty and Joe Parks, and every really resource we had as a company went into making sure that in the eyes of that customer, we took care of their issues. And ultimately, it was that intensity, that drive, that determination to not let that customer down really was the example of the Rajant culture. The way I viewed it as the CEO at the time, and I wasn't, I'm not capable of writing code, or I could get out there and maybe drive a truck. You probably don't want me to drive a haul truck, but I can assure you I'd be willing to do it. But what the view I took was, world's small, getting smaller with LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and every other kind of social messaging thing. We had this notion that our technology was better, unique, it was mobile, it could go on anything that was moving, we could scale. We had all these opportunities to actually prove what our mouth had been saying for years. And in my view, if you fail, and the industry's large, though, like all industries that are large, they're actually small. Everybody talks. Only a few people are necessary to spread the word across an entire industry. So in my view, the failure wasn't merely a failure of that particular opportunity. If we failed, it would probably preclude us from ever succeeding in that industry, and probably put us out of business. So the view was, it was a bet the company opportunity. And so that's what we did. We committed every resource in the company to make sure that we succeeded. And the technology team did an extraordinary thing there, and we were able to evolve our technology very quickly on a constant basis, and ultimately succeeded there with the idea that we would spare no expense to make that customer happy. We would not go, I can't send 2 guys, I need to save on airfare. We didn't say, oh, geez, we booked a trip at the last minute. We can't send somebody at the last minute, because we could save $500 if we waited a couple days. In that circumstance, we paid no attention to the perceived immediate costs of sending people out there. We did whatever we had to do to succeed, and ultimately we did. So what was the payoff for that? The payoff was, I think, today we're probably the largest provider of communications to the mining industry globally. And pretty much, I believe we have the same attitude. Really about any customer. Our service and support team, dev team still takes the same approach. If there's a customer with an issue somewhere in the world, we're going to figure it out. We're more disciplined than we used to be about tracking things like costs and stuff like that. But ultimately, the attitude is the same as it was then. I think the same attitude was shown early with Mike Van Rassen and the CRAM program. That's to those of you who don't know, that's counter rocket artillery and mortar. It's the U.S. system for shooting down incoming short-range projectiles. It's a big deal. It saves lives, and we were given that opportunity by Northrop Grumman probably in 2009 or 2010. And we did get brought in there by Northrop. And to give you an example, and I'm going to come out from behind this thing, Northrop, just like in the mining industry, to give you an example of why small companies fail, there were, in the mining industry, we were new. There was a company called Modular Mining that had a lot of the industry software. And so to run an operation, a data operation in an operating mine, almost everybody was using modular mining software at the time. And they were using, I believe, they had their own radio. And if they didn't have their own radio, they were intimately familiar with Cisco, I think was the technology. So we were an upstart competitor. And how do you think they reacted to a new competitor in the communications aspect of their business? Well, they reacted not well. They did whatever they could do they did denial of service attacks in the mine. They would alter settings on our radios. They would unplug antenna connectors and wires. They'd turn power off and into sheds that had our radio. They did anything they could to screw up Rajant and Rajant's reputation. This is not an uncommon thing. We confronted this sort of thing. So at Northrop, when we had the CRAM opportunity, there was a group in Northrop that brought us in. Now, Northrop is so big and so convoluted, there was another group on site that was trying to bring a competing radio to Mike Van Rassen. So the other Northrop group was in a different trailer down at the Yuma Proving Grounds. And they were married to a Motorola radio. And they really didn't want a Rajant radio coming in, even though it was also being brought in by Northrop. So from the other trailer, the other Northrop team would jam our radios while we were being tested and evaluated. So again, another diabolical, scheming, large company trying to kill a small company. And the team, once again, we committed everybody in that company, our company, to make that thing work. And Northrop, as the prime, and ultimately Mike Van Rassen as the program manager, adopted Rajant as the radio of choice for the CRAM program. And the CRAM program has been an extraordinary success, not just because of our participation, but in defending American soldiers around the world. In Afghanistan for more than a decade, in almost 20 years actually, and the same with Iraq and Syria, and even in the recent evacuation of the Kabul airport. The last actions on the ground were the CRAM system shooting down missiles being sent daily by the Taliban into the evacuation area. And I believe the system operated successfully 100% of the time during that evacuation. The system worked under fire using Rajant radios as the backbone. And I know we have, as a team, as the Rajant team, saved probably thousands of lives through the CRAM program and the Wolfhound program as well around the world. So the team has done extraordinary things, succeeded when competitors did whatever they could do to block us. And it's usually because of the feet on the ground at Rajant, the dev team on the ground, service and support folks on the ground, Paul leading them, Marty leading them. This group executes literally under fire. And that's the history of this company. That's how we got to be in the 10% group of companies that have succeeded. It's really the willingness, the desire to be persistent and stay focused, to remember ultimately what your job is. And we all have distractions, and there's all things that make the day tougher. But as a group, over 20 years, this is a group that has executed in an extraordinary way, not always with a lot of resources, particularly in the early days of the company. The team has really, really remembered every day why we're here. Have fun, be nice to each other, but ultimately we have to execute. And so the folks have executed. I think we have a chart with the financial thing. So I'm going to tell the story of Rajant financially, but there's a lot of other information about it. I like to be as transparent as possible about an organization, because my view is if you don't tell people what's going on, they just make it up. And usually they make it up and it's with wrong information. So I'd rather just give you the right information, at least what I think is right information. So this is the history of Rage. And our first year of revenue was really 03, 04. I think might have been does anybody know here? So I guess some people know. We started as a result of 9/11. Paul and we thought there would be ways to create a wireless technology that would allow people that didn't know anything about communications to set up networks very quickly. And that was the predicate for the company, was a rapid deploy wireless communication system to be set up by people that didn't know anything about communications. And we sold precisely really nothing into of that technology into the first response community, but we did pretty quickly build a capability, and that's the Ragent Wireless breadcrumbs to do that. 04 probably I think 03 maybe a couple 100,000 in revenue. From 04 to I think this year, 2022, it looks like our compound annual growth rate is 22% per year over about 18 years of revenue. And I think in the 18 years of revenue, we had 15 up years and 3 down years. So down year being a year less than the revenue that year was lower than the prior year. So 22% compound annual growth. And this is organic growth. A lot of companies can cheat the growth thing by doing an acquisition or merging. And they go, oh, we just bought that big chunk of revenue, and they include that in their growth rate. This is all organic. We've not acquired anybody over the years. It's just consistent, persistent blocking and tackling over time. I expect this year will be probably north of 55 if Diana can ship what she's supposed to ship. Oh, you've been promoted now, right? Yeah, so she's been promoted to COO of Ragent. So that's but she's responsible along with the whole dev team in figuring out how to ship in this environment. And just to give you a sense of, we normally make, hardware is a tough business. We normally net about 10%. So if we do 20 million in sales, we'll make a couple million in revenue. This year we'll be, probably between 55 and 60 million, depending upon what we can ship. And there's a decent chance we might make no money this year. Supply chain issues are crazy, where recently Paul and Diana came to me so that I could pay, we bought 1,000 parts. I think it were $9 parts for $225 a piece. So a normal $9,000 purchase order was $225,000. I think we had a $16 diode that we paid $500 for recently. So I know we keep hearing like 8% inflation, but we would kill for 8% inflation here. It's crazy. But, go back to the 90% failure rate. There's just something every year, right? I mean, business is hard. It's a knife fight every year. There's not a year where it's not hard. What did we have up until supply chain? What did we have the last 24 months? We had COVID, right? I mean, just, all of a sudden everybody works from home, and we're a company where, engineers work shoulder to shoulder. We build things, people touch things physically, and we can't have anybody come to the office. So, the team's really good. Whatever the problem is, we just kind of focus and work on it. Don't get too crazy about it. Get crazy for a second, but get back to work. So, here we've been, the story of the business is mostly organic, where we we founded the company with about $3 million of our own money. In 06, we had a venture firm invest in us. I think it was $3.1 million. I think that was the number, 3.1 or 3.2. In 08, the same group did a venture, I would call it a venture loan to us of $1.5 million. So between the 06 and 08, we took in about $4.7 million of outside capital. That was it until 2016, we bought those folks out. So they owned about a third of the company. We bought them out at a very, very, very discounted price. It was really great for the remaining. I think the company in 14 was probably worth about $20 million, and we bought them back at a price that valued the company at $4.5 million. So it was about a 75% discount that we were able to buy them back in 2016. 2017, we had investment from a giant Japanese company called Mitsui, big conglomerate. They invested $2 million. It was 90 days after we bought the other company out at $4.5 million valuation, and then we got the Mitsui money to come in at a $25 million valuation. So it was a 500% increase in price in 90 days. So that worked out well for us. And then in 2018, Wabtec, Westinghouse Air Brake, actually it was George Westinghouse's first company. Before he got into circuitry and Westinghouse Electric, he had invented in the 1860s a way to brake trains using air pressure as the modality. And that to this day globally is really the only way trains are braked. There's a few instances of electronic braking, but George Westinghouse invented that system probably 150 years ago. And that's still the way trains are braked today. And they bought GE Transportation, so they're about an $8 billion company now. They invested, I think it was $3.8 million in 2018. So that's really the only outside investment. Over the course of this, you'll see, we continue to grow. And this is really the 2020 and 2021. Those are COVID years. It's really that's an amazing performance by the people in this room to execute under really, really challenging circumstances. We did not decline in revenue. We actually went up. We didn't hit our budget or goals, but it was kind of a miracle that we did what we did. And again, that's a function of the team and the company culture of staying focused on what matters. And so we were able to do it under pretty significant pressure. 2022, we're going to do okay, sell more than we ever did, probably make less money, just because of the reality of the world. We don't whine about it. It is what it is. That's the financial picture. The company's in good shape. Financially, we've been prudent over the years in general, and we've been fortunate enough to have really good people combined with customers that took a shot on. I mean, Anglo American, they standardized on us. I don't know how many years ago, 8, 10 years ago, and they're what, a $50-60 billion company, and stuff like that. Really helps a company to survive. We've been able to, for the most part, not need a lot of outside money. We could have been bigger, and that's an option that gets presented to us all the time because bankers and venture folks, despite their, particularly venture folks' reputation for only being interested in taking risks, they're really interested in taking no risk. And so we're a company that's kind of predictable and successful over time, so people want to give us money. But I'm not necessarily an expert in long-term personal relationships. So So when you start numbering your wives, you need to introduce humility into your ability to judge relationships. Well, when you bring in a big investor, you are getting married. And trust me, that really makes me nervous. So we've been cautious with outside capital. And as a result, we still control the company. And how does that affect you? Well, I'll give you an example. So we have, Wabtec, Westinghouse Air Brake. They're an investor since 2018. They are a public company. And, as such, they're driven by quarterly earnings. So when they were negotiating, we were negotiating, they were interested, and they during the negotiation, their chairman said to me, and we'd really like a board seat on Rajant's board. Now, we hadn't given Mitsui a board seat. They're an $85 billion company. They had observer rights. And we didn't take the money we negotiated for over 2 years. We did not take the money, and that was one of the big hangups, because I just said, you're not coming on our board. We need our board members to work. This is like $2 million. You're an $85 billion company. You spend more on pencils. And I watched how they treated the $2 million investment. They must have spent $1 million on legal fees. I mean, they went back, literally, they went back and dug up my ancestors to check DNA. I mean, it was unbelievable, the scrutiny that they put into a $2 million investment. So what's the symbol and sign they're telling me about what they're going to be like as a board member? They're giving you this when someone's beginning to date you, everything's wonderful, right? When they're saying, oh, no, nothing's going to change. If we're on the board, you'll get to do what you do. And I didn't believe it for a second. So we didn't let Wabtec, or we didn't let Mitsui have a board seat. Now, they've turned out to be a good partner, but they don't have a board. So Wabtec, the chair of it, says the same thing. We want a board seat. I said, well, I think that's a great idea, because I'm going to love serving on your board. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, that seems only reasonable. I said, you guys could be a big help to us. I know I could be a big help to you. And I think they disagreed. And they never brought it up again about having the board seat. However, they are a public company. So their mission, of course, is earnings every quarter. Well, when we were negotiating, they said, well, how do you think about managing the company? I said, well, the thing I give most weight to is revenue growth. So I want the top line to grow. I want us to keep getting bigger, because revenue has its own value in the marketplace. The bigger you are, the bigger you're perceived to be, the easier it is to do certain things. So, and it has gotten easier at this size of the company than back when we only have 10 people and nobody knows who the hell you are. So I said, I give weight to revenue first, and then cash second, because we don't want to have to be forced into the marketplace to raise money. Because when you really need to raise money, that's the wrong time to do it. It's really expensive, the terms are egregious, and it's like a forced marriage at that time. And I don't do good with the voluntary one. So I said, so top line, revenue first, second is cash, and earnings, EBITDA, earnings in the public company world, third. It's not that I'm disinterested in earnings, want to make money, but that's not what I give the highest weight to, nor will I. And you have to understand, as long as I'm CEO and you're an investor, that's the weight I'm going to give to things. So they're like, yeah, they nodded their head. As a non-public company, I will continually, and we will continually invest in new technology. I'd rather hire engineers. My bias is towards engineers, people who build things, right? Salespeople, people who sell things, right? I got a great T-shirt today, because those of you who know me know that I say this quite often. sell anything today. And I think we've hired salesmen, and before the end of their first day, I've asked this of salesmen. So my bias is first towards engineers, because I like people who build things, and if you don't build things, we can't sell anything. Then I like people who sell stuff, because if we don't sell anything, none of us get to eat. And then after that comes our crack marketing staff, in terms of ranking things, or overhead, like people like me that you just pay me, right? So engineers first, and I will sacrifice earnings to always hire engineers, because if we don't build things, we fall behind and eventually we're out of business. The weight of the management here is first towards growth. Growth is an expression of engineering talent and sales talent. And that's where the weight is, and that's where the weight will stay. And yes, I want to make money, but we'll sacrifice that for the longer term picture. And that's just as long as I got the mic, next year if I got the mic, it'll be the same story. And somebody somewhere will yell at me that, you weren't efficient with money. And I just think we have to think in the long term in order to get to the long term. So we're going to continue to do that. And that's not going to change. I think we have a picture of the number of employees. Right, so this has been the growth of the company, and it's been fairly stable and consistent. We've bumped it here in the last few years, and if this idea doesn't work, then you can blame me. I own it 100%. If it does work, it's because you folks are executing. But when COVID happened, it was extraordinarily important thing from a change perspective. Not only just working at home, but it was pretty clear to me that dynamics were going to be tumbled and upset around the world in so many ways. When it comes to government's ability to perhaps not meet its goals, no man can exceed me in cynicism. So I thought the changes would be dramatic and unpredictable, and that whatever was the way we were doing things probably would not be effective. I didn't know what the outcome would be. I just knew there was no going back from some of the drama we were seeing. Many companies panicked during that period of time. And I was astonished at the number of layoffs, like instantly. Takes years to build a company, years for people to acquire knowledge about their product or their task in that organization. It's hard to get teams built, hard to get teams to function. Back to the 90% issue, most companies fail. And so for those of you who are new, we took a somewhat different path when shutdowns happened. It was March of, I'm losing track, 2020? March of 2020, we got some crazy email from the governor of Pennsylvania saying our business was shut down. And I'm thinking, where did he get that power? We knew some people in the governor's office, and by the next day, we had a waiver from the governor's office that we didn't have to shut down. That this was before they had waivers, before they had declared essential companies. And so we had a waiver within 24 hours. And then I think Charles copied that thing from the governor and sent a piece of paper around, and anybody could print it and put it in their car in case they were being pulled over on the roads and dragged out and beaten, because they were going to get a sandwich or something. Oh, we couldn't get sandwiches anymore. So we immediately addressed that problem, and we did it for our supply chain as well. So EFE and other people were able to stay open. And of course, we took the thing serious. People could work from home. We changed the ventilating system in the building so we had more turn. We put ionizers in the system to kill germs. We had the building wash it down every day, every door handle sprayed, and we did whatever we could do. But at the same time, we tried to figure out how to function. And I'm reading like Schlumberger, Mutu's in here somewhere. Schlumberger, how many people they lay off like within 48 hours? How many people were laid off at Schlumberger? 21,000 people. 21,000 people out of work. Just astonishing. And so for me, whatever I do, I can't do anything without you, without a team. And I just watched companies just nuke their staffs and blow people up and basically send a message that, when it gets a little tough, you're going to pay the price. And it just was astonishing. So what we did here is we took a little bit different approach. I said, you know what? There's some talent going to be available that we would never see. People in jobs 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And we're actually going to expand during COVID. That was that was me. So if we expand it and it doesn't work, this is the reason right here. So we decided to add staff during COVID, and you can see we our revenue, we've done okay. We've done okay during that period. We took a different view about transparency. I think those of you here remember every 2 weeks we had conference calls. And I think we broke it up into about 10 person on a call, about 12 calls every 2 weeks, where I would say how much cash we had in the bank, what revenue we had done in the prior 2 weeks, what revenue we had done versus our goal for the year. Basically, very specific details about the financial condition of the company, with the caveat and promise that we weren't going to lay anybody off. We were not going to lay, and we did not. And after like 6 or 7 of those calls, and once most of the folks here realized, well, they got money in the bank, they're not laying me off, the calls got shorter and shorter, and the questions got fewer and fewer. Because like all of us, right? Everybody's worried about their family and their, and can I pay my bills? So I think people got comfortable that, yeah, we meant it. We weren't laying anybody off, and we did other things. We because the restaurants were shut down. So we brought in food. First, the chefs came in themselves because they were looking for work. So we fed our employees every day, at least through the first year of COVID. We got groceries. Dave Skana, Dave instantly figured out that the food distributors had just lost all their customers. All the restaurants have been shut down. So we opened up commercial food accounts, and we got steaks and French fries and all kinds of frozen things, and we just threw them in our freezers and said to employees, so you don't have to fuss with going to grocery stores and lines a mile long, just take food. I don't know, I'm just not smart enough to know why we had a toilet paper emergency, but we did. Memo went out from the government and we had a toilet paper emergency. So we found a way with all of a sudden we were a commercial restaurant company, and Dave found a way to get, we got toilet paper and I think paper towels. It was a miracle, right? A miracle of the 21st century. We had paper towels. So we had thousands of paper towels and toilet paper and just gave it to employees so they didn't have to deal with this stuff. And those were the kinds of things we did just to help people get through that strange period of time. And to let people know that, we're in this together, kind of thing. So that's that's a picture of our financial life here. Very consistent performance over time. It's a team that, when focused on an issue with a customer, doesn't focus on the last nickel. I'd rather hire more engineers and more salespeople than eke out the last penny that we can from a profit perspective. We are not driven by quarterly reports. We'll never be driven by, as long as they haven't gotten rid of me yet, and as long as I'm healthy, and health is an important thing here at Rajant. We have yoga instructors and high intensity trainers, and we have, I think, good food and free vending machines and stuff like that. That comes out of a really wonderful fellow who passed away many years ago, John Wirtz, and it bothered me. It struck me a lot of that we could have done more to represent the notion of taking care of yourself from a health perspective. So, and I hate to do things after a person passes, but we did. Since then, we've tried to find ways to encourage people to be healthy. And not because we're going to extract another half an ounce of work out of you, because we just want you to be healthy. You can go home and take care of your family. So that's an important thing here as part of the culture. So it's focus on what matters. Don't get caught up in too much crap. I try to, how many of you know who Vince Lombardi, the football coach, was? I'm dating myself here, but there was a guard by the name of Jerry Kramer who wrote a book, and he said, well, in the book, he said, people always wanted to know how Lombardi treated us. Did he treat anyone differently? He said, no, he treated us all the same, like dogs. I want to treat you all good, but not like Vince Lombardi, right? So I want to keep, I want everyone focused on the main thing with the knowledge that if you work here, you're entitled to respect, no matter what. If you're good enough to work here, you should just be well treated. And that applies to everybody. Everybody, every single person should be given courtesy and respect if they're part of the family and on the team. So that's the goal. It's not a complex thing. It's not a list of 50 rules or 100 rules. Not going to be that. It's really kind of simple. Treat people decently. Doesn't need to be complex. Doesn't need to be super hard. And then get back to work. And know that the company, if for whatever reason somebody actually were to, in the traditional sense, mistreat somebody, we're not going to put up with it. So be thoughtful online, be thoughtful with each other, and then do your job. It doesn't have to be a 1,000-page thing. And that's been consistent over time and will continue to be consistent. So that's a get to work, treat each other decently. The company is really focused on growth. We want you to grow. If you're ambitious, I like that. We'll try to figure out how to support you if you want to grow in something. I love people that just want to get better at what they do. You want to take a class, you want to go to a training program. Just do it. Be better. Be hungry. Want to improve what you do, and we'll support that. And then in your personal lives as well, those that have special issues going on, they generally over the years, people know they can come to me and we'll figure something out. We'll try to accommodate the fact there's, I think, 179 people now at the company. That's 179 complex lives. You're just not employee 179. People are married, people have children, people get sick, people have relatives who pass away. We have our own people who passed away. Rick Hevner, recently, Jonathan, we have other people with illnesses. It's just life. And so that's going to be reflected here, and we're going to respect that. I have a saying around the office called family first. And because the way I view it is, I want us to succeed at Rajant. If you're not succeeding at home, it's going to be very hard for you to help us do what you do. So So that matters to me. When I look at folks here, I just don't see an employee. I see a wife, a mother, a father, somebody who pays tuition, somebody who's got baseball practice, somebody who's a coach, somebody who's taking care of a sick partner. So that's just part of the deal. And that's, for those of you who are new, it's not Shangri-La. We're humans. There's tensions and issues and all the stuff that comes with life, but our bias here is towards understanding that you're here, you're on the team, you're part of the family. Now, I hope that we're not a super dysfunctional family, but that's just the reality of it. Those kinds of things I expect, and generally we accommodate over the course of your career here. And I think that's the state of Ragent. Sometimes people walk around and go, hey, are you being useful? So that's the flip side of being on the family. So to that question, there really is only one answer. What's the answer? There it is, right? That's not hard. Absolutely yes over here. Absolutely, yes. So are you being useful? Have you sold anything today? That's basically, when I graduated from Wharton, those were the two things they gave me. So, do you want to run a company? Ask these two questions. That was it. And then I got, yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. So that's it. So thank you. Thanks for being on the team. I hope you'll have a good week. So Gary has been with us, close to 20 years as well. And Gary, and you'll see. I don't want to repeat what's in the video, but he hasn't been feeling well. And I guess a month or so ago, we honored him with this video. Gary, like Mike and like Peter, just long-standing service to Ragent and just great people, all three of them. And Gary is a unique individual in so many positive ways. Very, 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 very skilled in human relations, and a good example to everyone else about. I mean, you're on a street somewhere in South America, and Gary will say, "See that guy over there? I met him in an elevator in Las Vegas 9 years ago, and his name is Jorge Gonzalez. Oh, I have his card." And it's just, and I'm not making that up. I mean, the guy's quite extraordinary. We continue to pray for his health, but know this is a wonderful man, and he's been a gift to Ragent because of his personal skills. I'd like all of you to join me in honoring Gary Anderson. I thought it would be important that we take this time today to help you understand about him as a man and what he's meant to so many people, but especially those of us at Ragent.
So as a startup, one of the things you do is really pay attention to who your competitors might be in your industry. One of the companies that we had identified as a potential competitor, Vivado, suddenly announced that they were shutting down, or at least that was the rumor. I called Bob that day and said, hey, maybe we can try and see if there's any good developers there that we could hire. And Bob said, yeah, let me think about that and see if I can make a few calls and I'll let you know.
I called out to Vivado. I said, so I have a question for you. Who's your best salesman? And he said, oh, that's easy. That's Gary Anderson. And I said, well, tell me a little about him. He says, well, we do like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 million in revenue, and Gary's responsible for 80% of our sales. I said, well, that's the guy I want to talk to.
The next call I got from Bob was that he was interviewing their best salesman and hoped to hire him. I was a little disappointed that my desire for developers had turned into a sales guy. Since we really weren't selling much yet, Bob convinced me that this guy Gary was worth a try. Gary started with Ragent at the beginning of 2006. It wasn't even 4 months later that we had our first major customer, happened to be in the mining business. It just built from there. Gary has brought us basically into every industry that we've been in. Gary's been a major component in achieving that. It's hard enough to come into a company in a startup phase. You have very few resources, but to have lasted as long as Gary has been with Ragent, he is one of the reasons why we're all still here today.
Gary sold antennas to the Kennecott copper mine out in Salt Lake City. So he cycled back through with this new box of products, which were Ragent radios. He got a meeting and he went and presented to them. And they were up in the administrative kind of control room, which sits about 2/3 above the mine floor. The mine's about 5,000 feet deep. The guys he was talking to apparently were a little distracted because they were having problems with the pumps at the bottom of the mine. And in mines of that size, if your pumps fail, you quickly go from being a mine to being a lake. And so Gary, being Gary, said, if you got Wi-Fi controls on those pumps, he says, I'll bet our Ragent radios will probably let you link to them. And they said, okay, let's test that theory. So they pounded a metal pipe into the cliff overlooking the mine so the pipe could see the administrative building and it could see the bottom of the mine. And they zip tied the radio to the pipe. They then drove to the bottom and put another radio at the bottom, plugged into the pump controls at the bottom. And, Gary, in effect, was letting them hold the puppy, right? He was like, hey, why don't I leave them here? They popped another radio on in the admin building and they were able to bring up the network and they were able to link to the pump controls at the bottom. He went back a few months later and he said, hey, how's it working? And they said, it must be working well because we haven't had any issues. We really haven't had to check, which was very telling because ultimately that's the reputation of Ragent. You just kind of turn it on and it works, though we didn't know that at the time. Certainly not in the mining industry, for which we had no business and never planned on having any business. There was no business plan I ever wrote for Ragent that ever mentioned the word mining. With no administration, kept working. They had no problem with access to their pump controls and solved the problem for them. So that led to a discussion about, gee, do you think you could put your radios on our trucks? Of course, for a young company, the only answer to any time a potential customer asks you whether you can do something, the only answer is yes. I think we're talking about 160 vehicles in motion constantly in an extraordinarily rough environment. But we said yes, we could do it, and we did it. We executed at the Kennecott mine. It was Gary did the front end work with the customer, and we ended up with one of the largest copper mines in the world by tonnage and revenue, being our first customer in the mining industry. They unbelievably put their mine operations on a Rajant network when I'll bet we didn't have 15 employees. And that led to us today probably being the largest supplier of communications technology to the mining industry globally. And to say that gave us the ability to leverage our success there into the industry is an understatement.
We're actually up at 260 mines today, and this is due in large part to Gary Anderson, who got our first mine at Kennecott. We're currently on our third generation with Kennecott, and even though it's 260 today, I'm sure it'll be 270 tomorrow, 280, we're on our way to 300.
At the time Gary came into Rajant, we were a direct sales company. So that meant we did everything. Gary was not only instrumental in introductions and the sales that he's known for today, but everything from customer service to making sure we delivered on time.
In 2004, I was running a value-added reseller or integrator of mining technology, predominantly selling software solutions. And it became really apparent to me, if we were going to be successful selling mining technology, we had to find a reliable, robust, wireless network that could live in the extreme conditions of mining. My sales rep said to me, "So are you still looking for a wireless network?" And I said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's why my sales projections are so low, because until I find one, nobody's going to buy your software applications from me." Well, he showed up, and with him was his new boss, a gentleman by the name of Gary Anderson. It was pretty obvious within 10 seconds of them walking in that this meeting was Gary Anderson's meeting. I'll never forget Gary setting up the demo. He had his guy plug in a unit in the wall. It was tipped up on the floor against the wall, and then they had another unit plugged in to the computer. But then he took a third unit with antennas sticking out of both ends, plugged into a battery, and then he also had one of those old Logitech webcams that used to sit on top of your big VGA monitor. And so he's got this armful of equipment, and he marches out of the conference room and down the hall and into our stairwell, which was basically the earthquake shelter for the building. Well, he's walking down the stairwell, and we still have perfect video. He walks out of the stairwell and across the lobby, out the front door, across our parking lot, and then across our next door neighbor's parking lot. And I told the salesman that was there before Gary even turned around, I said, "I'm sold." So Gary came back into the room, and I said, "Okay, great. So where do I sign up?" And he and the salesman kind of look at each other and then look at me, and they're like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I'm sold. Obviously, you came here and showed me this gear to sign me up as a reseller." And they're shaking their heads. They're like, "Well, we don't have resellers. We sell direct." And then I started to get a little indignant. I was like, "Well, what are you doing here wasting my time if I can't sell your equipment?" And they said, "Oh, okay, I'm sorry." He goes, "Well, technically today we don't have resellers. I have this idea that we would do much better if we sold through value-added resellers like yourselves. We just can't sign you up today, and we need your help." So that began many, many conversations with Bob Skina. We're now here at the Partner Summit celebrating the fact that we have resellers all over the world pushing and promoting our product. This all came about as a result of Gary having the vision of that Rajant could go much farther and wider around the globe if we had reseller partners who were actively replicating what Rajant at the time was trying to do themselves in countries all over the world in a variety of industries.
Gary has been the prime factor in introducing us to some companies that I think most people at Rajant don't even know how we got that relationship. Everybody from British Telecom, BP, Exxon, and then most of the mining companies. I mean, back in 2008, Gary was already talking to Anglo American, who is a big customer today.
A lot of our military sales. He helped with our early relationship with Mindsight Technology, which is really our first international work. He got us our first oil customer, Discovery Natural Resources, which is in Texas. And I think today there's like 600 radios there. Iron Ore of Canada, Syncrude, oil sands, Northern Canada. And everywhere in the world he went, he made friends. He made friends for us. He got us known. He got us known in Australia. He got us known in South America. Got us known in South Africa. Got us known in Asia. Got us known in Canada. All the while being kind of preternaturally positive. He injected his positive, energetic DNA into the Rajant culture.
When I started here, even before I started here, Gary went out of his way to talk to me about the technology, about the industries that we serve, about his experiences, about the history. With a level of pride, he brings that to everybody that he knows and everybody that has the pleasure of crossing his path. And he took the time and invested in me, and ultimately was a change agent for the fact that I ended up making my next home Rajant Corporation. What he invested in others is still showing itself and will continue to prove itself out over time.
About 8 or 9 years ago, in Wickenburg, Arizona, at the end of a long day where I had been thoroughly beat up by lawyers from a mining supply company that wanted a deal their way. So we went to the barbecue that night. And it's a beautiful setting because you're in the desert. It's little or no light pollution, stars and sky as far as you can see, beautiful colors that you're not used to seeing on the East Coast. And we all had, a nice big meal and some music, but I just wanted to go home. I was beat up. I wanted to call my kids, say goodnight. So I asked Gary and Eva for a ride. Of course, jump in the back. And I watched him. He walked around, he opened the door for Eva, and Eva got in the passenger side, Gary got in the driver's side, and I got in behind Eva. The desert can be a disorienting place. I'm getting more and more convinced we're heading in the wrong direction. I can see in the rearview mirror that little bit of light that I could see is getting further and further away. And so I say to Gary, hey Gary, I think I get stopped right there. And I was stopped by a look. In the rearview mirror, I can see Gary's eyes, and it's telling me, do not say one more thing, nothing. And then his look kind of transferred from me over to Eva, and I looked down and I saw that Gary's hand was underneath Eva's, and Eva had been gently gesturing Gary which way to go. So she was the GPS of the time. And Gary was dutifully following and didn't care if we were going in the right direction or not. He just looked at her with such a look of devotion and love and patience. I didn't say another word the entire trip except for thank you. And that's what I think about when I really think about Gary.
And we, all of us here at Rajant, I think there's 170 people now, really owe a lot to the impact he had on our company. Great love for his country, great love for his colleagues, and one of the most important people in the life of Rajant Corporation and the employees of Rajant Corporation. It's a great day for us to be taking the time to recognize Gary Anderson. we have Peter and Mike Folletti. Peter came to us in 2002 from, I think, Ben Franklin. It's a Pennsylvania kind of investment arm for the state of PA. They invest in tech companies. And Peter joined us pretty early in the game. He worked with us for 20 years, was very, very instrumental, really in our first international business. Amazingly, I think we're doing business in 74 countries at this point. And if you were the first few years of the business, if you were looking at any business plan we wrote or had or looking for money or whatever, we never mentioned the word international. Never. And today, more than half of our commercial business is international. So,
I wanted to capture just a few moments out of those 20 years, Bob, just to talk about, just sort of early and then mid and then final stages, which I thought you'd get a kick out of with some of the other folks. But, when 20 years ago, we had some money and a few people from previous deals, but we really didn't have any idea what we were going to do. We thought communications struck and whatnot, and then, we were scrounging for ideas and funding, and then after this meeting at Quantica that a few of us had, we came back, and you and Paul strategized, and we sort of, it was like the birth of the breadcrumb. And, we had a bread truck before that, and then we sort of narrowed it down. It was through the ingenuity of Paul and Marty and Joe Parks that it transformed it into a bread loaf and then a breadcrumb. And, I remember when we were trying to get some federal funding, he told me, he said, Peter, I want you to go play squash with this guy, Arlen Specter. I'm like, Arlen Specter? He's like a senator or something like that. He's like, I was in my early 40s. He's like, 70-year-old guy. I'm going to play squash with him for you. But just go play with him. So I get ready to go, and Bob says, you want to play with me? I said, yeah. So I said, okay. He gives me this T-shirt, and he had made up this T-shirt with these obnoxiously large letters that we fit across the sort of shirt of said region. So he had to make sure that Senator Specter remembered the name of the company. So he made me wear this T-shirt, RAJ, and then lower at AMT, which sort of was like the craziest T-shirt you've ever seen in your life. So I go play squash with Specter, and he's like, that's an interesting shirt. I said, well, yeah, it's a custom shirt for vacation. So I forgot to ask Bob what I should do. So I made sure that he won. It was the best out of 5 games. In the fifth game, overtime by 1 point. And he always remembered that, and he made me play with it a few more times. But then Bob was, he was Bob's best friend, and we ended up getting a lot of funding from the government over the years. And it was, our survey contracts for 10 years or so. I don't know what we get. We got like $50 million from survey Bob, something like that. A lot of them. Years, something like that. But it was great. It was the start of a great. But then I was saying midterm. Okay, so midterm, I have a few thoughts. It was post-Kennecott, which we already talked about, and then we already had the first round of institutional funding. And it was June of 2007, and we didn't really have a sales team then. Everyone sort of did a lot of things. So Bob said, Peter, I want you to go to Pittsburgh. I booked this booth for underground mining. Okay, so I want you to go out there for a day and check out. I'm like, okay, so I went to Pittsburgh. And I'll never forget the moment because my father had been sick, and I was out in Pittsburgh, and I got a call 6:30 in the morning. My father died. And I'm like, oh, geez. So I was the only one out there. We had this booth all day. So I said, I gotta go to the booth. I can't, go home and deal with this right now. I'll go back tonight. So I go to this booth. We're all set up for underground mining, which we had no presence in at the time. It's just, a supplier. And then this guy comes up to me with this heavy Australian accent. And lo and behold, it was Mike Folletti, which you see on the screen right there. So that was when Mike and I first met. And we started this relationship with MineSite because he was an executive at MineSite at the time. And we set up this 5-year deal, and it was very successful, and it was great for the company. And we were our first year with that RBC mine in 2008, which was awesome, and it was like our second or third mining deal. I don't remember where the IOC came in, but it was right around the same time. And we did a lot of business with Mindset, about $10 to $20 million over those years. And it sort of led to the development of that UX after the Sago Mine disaster, when we thought, hey, maybe there is an underground mining option, because they require all underground mining to have personal communicated tracking. So Keith Sullivan was awesome. He and I spent several years developing that UX and with the rest of the dev team and MSHA approval and all that stuff. And then Mike and I worked for years as he came to the U.S. and we worked to really market that through the U.S. toll system. We were an adjunct to mine sites communication system there, where I think you guys captured most of the market. I think it's like with mine site. It's like a huge market for you guys, I believe. And then we got our first PO. I think it might be the largest single commercial PO. It's a little over $4 million from mine site to build and develop the UX platform. So that was like the mid stage. And then sort of the later stage, I wanted, Bob, you were hot off a meeting with Union Pacific and you said, hey, we got to get in the rail. So, it's like, okay, so let's figure out what we're going to do. So we said, okay, let's go to Italy. So we built this crazy little contraption, which now is our rail generator. And we took it to Italy, and it was mesmerized. And people didn't even know who Fraser was, but they came to look at this rail generator, which at that point was sort of like, just a little prototype. And now, look, here's 5 or 6 years later, it's a reality. I mean, we have a rail generator, we have this energy harvester technology that we co-developed. We developed most of it, but Labtech was heavily involved. And that started the momentum with the transportation industry, with SEPTA and Labtech and Axomax. And I think that at that point, it was like 2018, and Jeff said, hey, we need a person for Australia. And I said to Bob, what about Mike Folletti? He retired from Mineside, he was sort of, sailing in the South Pacific or Indian Ocean or something like that. So we figured out a way to reach them, and lo and behold, we brought Mike back on our team, and it was a perfect fit for us to have Mike on the team. So, I leave behind lots of great memories and stories. I could go on and on, but I won't. Friendships, co-workers and partners, and 10 years of cheering the charity golf out at partner events, which is certainly on this. But I'm passing the baton to all the others there, and to keep the raging juggernaut going. And thanks to everybody. Thanks Bob, thanks Paul, Dave, Charles, Diana, Jeff, and others. And if you guys see Bob wandering the hall someday, looking around, saying, "Did you sell anything yet? Did you sell anything yet?" He's probably in the direction of where I used to sit. So.
Now, and thank you, Peter. You were extraordinarily loyal and productive and fun and interesting for 20 years. So I still wish you were here.
I miss you guys.
Yeah. And then we got Mike Folletti up there, who Mike. We had our first, through Peter, our first international relationship was with Mindsight Technologies out of Australia, and Mike, it was an interesting company. It was Lloyd Zanari was the president. Mike was their head of sales. So two fine Italian men, and then there was Gary Zamel, I believe, was your chairman and founder, and one thing about Mike and Lloyd was they were really, really, really good, solid, tough business guys. But it was clear right from the beginning that once you had to deal with them, they would honor everything they said. So they were completely reliable and utterly honorable. and it was obvious right from the beginning, and I was really drawn to both of them because I just had a lot of respect for them because they, while, they were friendly, but they represented their company hard, which I respected, and then you could count on them. And so Michael and I, we had a lot of events in Aguila, Arizona, with an old mining town. It was really wild, a lot of hiking and mountain shooting and helicopter rides and quads, and we blew things up and we really enjoyed blowing things up. And Michael just fit right in. He was willing to shoot at anything. Yep.
It's been a real journey from my perspective. Really, it was over a period of 15 years. As Peter indicated before we met in 2007, helped develop the mining industry, initial business in Australia and in the local region. They did that quite successfully. Then about 6 years ago, actually, I finally retired through Indonesia, totally retired. And then just like the mafia, they dragged me back. Next thing you know, I worked for that. And it's worked well. I believe, I've been able to make some impact in the Asia-Pacific market, developing the market in a lot of places from scratch, and helping to grow existing business. It's been a pleasure working with you, Bob, and the rest of the radio team. But there comes a time when, we've got to hang up our shingles, they say, and I'll always look back on working with Ray and very fond memories. And again, thanks to all the support I've received from the entire radio team across the last 5 years working with you. It's been a great pleasure, and it's a honor.
So these guys have been great. That's the thing, right? So we... So these men are also my friends. So I love you guys, and stay in touch with us. There's still more to do, and I may call upon you. You're like the retired men of Marvel, right? So you may have to pick up your shields, and come back and help us from time to time. See the enthusiasm there, man? Right. Thanks, guys, and we'll be talking soon. Bye-bye. The technology's cool, but really the people are cooler, right? And so thank you again for being on the team. There's a history that's beginning to be built, and I'm glad for the new folks that are going to be part of this. But just remember, it all comes down to our relationship with each other. So thank you.
For those of you that are newer to Rajant, I'm Jeff Smith. I'm the head of commercial sales and marketing. So I'm going to give you a little bit of overview of where we are with respect to this year and where we're going in the future. So what matters most? Well, what matters most is revenue. So just give you an idea of this was the best year that the commercial sales team had. When COVID hit, the oil price went negative. All of our funnel for oil just stopped instantaneously. The United States just went to sleep. It was like a bear going into slumber for the winter because it didn't wake up for like 6 months later. And it was crazy, but thank God Phil's here. Thank God for the Australians. They kept moving along, right, Bernard? It was like every month we were getting another PO from the Aussies, which was keeping our commercial sales going during COVID. And then the other significant thing that happened during COVID was the engineering team produced some great new products. So the FE1 was launched during COVID. It has been a resounding success for us. It was launched at a perfect time, right when some competitors came out with some new products, and they had, now they're having supply chain issues. And then we also had the ES1 that was launched to get us into more of the mid-tier market that we're selling into, where they don't need the ruggedness of the FE1. So where are we today? So this is where we are right now. So as of last Friday, this is how we compare to our best year ever in commercial sales. We're not even halfway through the year, and so our sales and backlog is already exceeding our best year. So we're currently at 29.2 something million dollars. And what sales and backlog is sales is what we've shipped for revenue. Backlog is what is in the queue. We have purchases in place to ship. And we're obviously the operations team and the development team is dealing with supply chain issues on seems like a minute by minute basis. But this will continue to grow throughout the remainder of the year. And is this good? Okay, it's decent. Is it good enough? Hell no. This is absolutely not good enough for us, because the products that this company makes for us, I've been in the wireless industry for 22 years. I've been with Rajant for 5.5, and the products that this company makes are so unique. They're so differentiated. They're so high quality. There's so many different market potentials that we can do a lot better. And you saw Bob's numbers of where he wants the company to go from a revenue perspective, and that's what we're driving towards. So this is the start, but definitely not the finish. I'd like to just recognize a couple of departments within the company that don't get as much recognition as they should, but we wouldn't be able to do anything without the operations team and their ability to source the components to be able to deliver products. We wouldn't be able to do anything without the finance team to be able to, take care of everything that they deal with from a PO basis and a, accounts receivable basis. The shipping department, we wouldn't be able to do anything if we weren't shipping product out and getting that out on a daily basis. The administration, legal, HR, all the people that we've brought on board and we continue to bring on board. Who am I missing? Oh, RMAs. We got Brad in the RMA team. So, of course, we do a great job supporting the customers. And then the marketing and sales engineering team, of course. Sales team can't do our job if we don't have support from these parts of the company, tier 1 and tier 2 technical support. And last but not least, the dev team for all the fantastic products that they create for us and the quality of the firmware releases that are released on a continual basis. So thank you very much. So what's next? So these are our goals for second half 22. So the first one is we have a product that we launched last year called Mesh Tracer. It's personnel and asset tracking. And we have a heavy push on to drive sales in this in second half of the year. Why? Number one, it is a software as a service, so it's a recurring revenue model, and we need to get more recurring revenue in the company than all the project-based revenue that we're working on. Another one is it's software, it's not hardware. We have no supply chain sales. Wouldn't that be great for all the people in the room that are dealing with supply chain now? So that's a big push for us, and we can also sell it to all of our existing customers. So that's what we're working on right now. In addition to that, we are going to continue to keep the pedal down. Like Bob, my foot is epoxied to the accelerator, which is epoxied to the floor. So it's never letting up. And we got to continue to drive more Peregrine and Hawk sales. We had a phenomenal press release from Acubus a few weeks ago, and we have another one. Marnus, hopefully one of these days or years, we'll get the approval from Anglo to do the FE1 press release from them. But we're driving a lot more sales to increase the backlog. And we have, we've passed the certification with Epiroc in South Africa. We already have Hitachi. We have Sandvik. We've passed that. We're just waiting for a mine deployment to make the announcement on that. Komatsu, we passed all their testing. We're just waiting for commercial approval. And Saga's still working on that. Saga really got hung up in flight cancellations yesterday, so I think he's still driving here. There he is in the back. So he's still working on that for Komatsu. And then we've made some recent progress with Caterpillar. So we're making some progress with them in a lot of different mining areas. Drive ES1 and the new intrinsically safe ES1. Why? Well, we need the intrinsically safe to sell into petrochemical plants, and that will pull ES1 sales with it. The ES1 is also more readily available. Let me just leave it at that. So we're trying to push all the products we can today. And also our competitors are having significant supply issues. And so they can't deliver, we can deliver. So the second half of the year is a huge opportunity for us. So we got to work, I'm working with my guys to get our sales funnel together so we can work with Diana to make sure we get more purchase orders in place with our suppliers so we can get more units coming in. We have some new product variants that the team just completed for the ES1, which is a 50/50 that also supports 4.9. And there's an OEM variant of that we're driving into the robotics and the indoor warehouse space. Chris Mason was at a very large warehouse automation show last week in Stuttgart, Germany. Had the same experience that a few of us had when we were in Atlanta about a year ago, which is in all the indoor spaces, they all use Wi-Fi and they all have problems with Wi-Fi. So this is a phenomenal opportunity for us and a new market that we're driving further into. Couple more things is just, pushing the Axomax product that the team created. Justin was at the show with Wabtec recently, spent a lot of time working with their own staff to educate them to push it forward. We have a track verification system that Donnie and his guys put together. And then there's QMine and RISM, really driving the sales in RISM, the second half of the year. So we really are sprinting into 2023. So let's just talk about a little bit of accomplishments. And there will be a little bit on mining. There will be a lot on other markets, because I think hopefully what you take out of this is we're no longer a mining company. You're going to see a lot of new applications and deployments that the team has closed, where we've been deployed, that you haven't seen before. So just quick with respect to mining, this is Acubis. So this is their bracket they put together for the first deployment. Here's the first mine, which is Meando Mine in Australia that we did the press release on. This wonderful picture is Kennecott Phase 3. So this is BC Commander for Kennecott. It's more than 400 breadcrumbs and is our third iteration, one of our largest mine deployments. And I took just photos, so I don't have enough time to run videos, but this is Sandvik, and Carl sent me this video. It's a phenomenal video. The beauty of our technology as well, is one of the guys mentioned it, is how well we do video. It's really difficult to do video over wireless. I've done it before, and all the good video stutters and stops. It pixelates. It has all these problems, and people say, "Isn't that great?" It all isn't that great. But at Rajant, with the way that we've designed the product, the way the development team has designed the product, it just works really well. And so this is an underground video where Sandvik qualified us underground, and it just works seamlessly, from start to finish. So that's a great accomplishment for us. Here's another one. This is a truck deployment in, where is it, Daryl? It's Bloom Lake. So Daryl's making a lot of progress for us in Canada. And so this is a picture of an install in a truck at Bloom Lake. Daryl's also making more progress in Canada. He's bringing IOC back after they didn't want to talk to us for a long period of time, even though the network kept working for 10 years. Lo and behold. So we're making progress there. Here is, we have 3 deployments that are in process right now. Hopefully SEPTA gets done this decade. They seem to be one of the slowest deployments I've ever experienced in my life. And right now, New Mexico Rail and Istanbul Rail are the 2 that are leading to be done the first. And Istanbul Metro is 146 kilometers of underground communications is what is being deployed now. And we could show you offline the video. This is just a snapshot of the video. Again, it looks beautiful as we're driving, as the train is driving through the tunnel, 100% underground. Here's a port deployment. This is our largest port deployment in Kenya. This is Mombasa Port, where we have 260 breadcrumbs. Carl told me that if we put Antwerp in here, it would be about the size of 1/5 of this. That's how big of a monstrosity the Mombasa Port is. So this is a nice deployment for us. And today we're past 20 ports globally. I think Daryl has about 6 in Canada himself, so he's leading the way from a country perspective. And we're starting to get the reputation in ports that we have in mining, because I was at a show in London maybe a month and a half ago, and we actually had customers, end customers that were looking for Ragent that came up to us to talk to us because they wanted to use us in ports, and that was APM terminals. And then during the presentation, I had no involvement in this. We had some other people that have software solutions and hardware solutions. They were referencing Ragent on their own in their presentations as if you need a network that works, you need to talk to the guys from Ragent here. So we're starting to develop that reputation, which is really good. And then here's another port in Canada as well that Daryl has deployed. So eventually when Putin decides to back out of Ukraine one way or the other, we'll have another one of the Dudinka port, which is in Russia, which is closed half the year because they can't get ships into it. Keep going. So the fracking industry. I think when Al started here, he looked at, okay, where can I position Ragent fastest? And the fracking market is a great market because they move like every 6 months. There's a bunch of trucks, they have to pull cables, and so it was an ideal deployment or an ideal customer to target. And ProFrac and FTSI right now are just generating recurring revenue for us. They're probably the two largest customers we have in oil and gas currently. This was an interesting one to me because Al sent me a picture of this, and it's hard to see here, but right up there is the ES1 being deployed on a utility pole for automated meter reading backhaul. So we're the backhaul for the automated meter reading, and this is at Sapessa, Colombia. It's the island of Sapessa, and we're working on a complete citywide deployment there. So this is a nice reference for us. Give you guys some other examples. How many is it? 660 solar fields in the next 2 years? 6,080. I was off by order of magnitude only. So 6,080 is what is currently funded for solar deployments in the U.S., just the U.S. And there's, replicating this all over the world. There's a ton in the Middle East as well. And the nice thing about solar for us is they have to trench to put fiber in between the different solar grids. So it's an ideal application for us. And the ES1, because of the price point and the performance, is an ideal solution for these customers. The other thing that's benefiting us is our competitors can't deliver product, and our team is working harder than they are. So that is another big benefit for us. Here's one that's a little bit orthogonal that most of you probably are not aware of. But we have a customer called Celestial who does drone light shows. And all the drone light shows are done with Wi-Fi. There's a lot of delay. There's a lot of lag. You have to choreograph it. There's safety concerns because if there's a medical emergency, you have to get all the drones out of the sky. And it's very difficult to coordinate. And these guys are working with who's the lead singer of Coldplay? Chris Martin. So they're connected up to Chris Martin, who wants to do a live performance with drones where as he moves, the drones are moving in the sky with him. And so this could be the first opportunity we get to be, a live venue with a musical artist. And we need the small form factor, so they actually took the DX2 out of the enclosure to put it in the drone. And all these customers will be a target for the Algonquin product. So let's keep going with respect to accomplishments. So everyone knows Boston Dynamics. I think everyone in the world knows Boston Dynamics because they do a great job marketing their product. And we now have a kit that they designed to be on top of the robot, which they promote on the website. They bring us into opportunities globally. They're a great partner. But they're looking for something small and less costly to go inside. So this will be one of the first places that Algonquin will go. Looking at others, we continue to strive forward with Vorback, that they're our wearable partner. And we targeted public safety with them to start, but now we're bringing them into all of our traditional customers, mining, oil and gas, because there's opportunities for wearables in those markets as well. We continue striving to bring on new partners. So Easy Aerial is another one of us. They're quite a successful drone company. They've been focusing more on the military than commercial, but we just closed a deal with them for the Port of Elizabeth, APM terminals, where they have their drone deployed for video safety and security and inspection analysis throughout the port. Keep going. So here's another new application for us, irrigation. This is in, I think it's South Africa. It's Lindsay in South Africa. And there's a JR3 inside this enclosure up here that's connecting all of the irrigation wells together. And I asked the guys, I said, why Ragent? I mean, this should be like a LoRa deployment. It's low bandwidth. You don't need a lot of bandwidth. And they said, no, you're right. We don't need a lot of bandwidth. But they chose Ragent because Ragent was very, very simple for them to deploy. You don't need infrastructure. All of the wells can connect to each other, so that's a big advantage. So it's easy to deploy. You don't have the cost of the infrastructure. And also, they can envision adding new applications like video cameras going forward. So the whole, even for the rest of the sales team out here, hope everyone's paying attention, because this is a way that we can compete against LoRa in different applications. So that's a unique one. Harvesters. You guys ever think we'd sell to harvesters? Bob, was that in the business plan ever? The beginning of the company. So this is a harvester customer of ours in Indonesia that supports the Indonesian palm plantations. And if you guys ever fly into Indonesia or Malaysia, if you look out the window, that's all palm plantations. It's just all palm plantations. That's all you see. And then we have a couple of remote control construction customers. This customer is in Japan, where he's retrofitted both Hitachi and Komatsu heavy equipment to use it for remote control. And Todd is a customer of Southwest that's done stuff down at our border. Keep it moving forward. Sagar has a customer in Chile that has deployed our products for forestry application. This is a big opportunity in many parts of the world, so it's another vertical where we have success. And a lot of these are, once you do the first, then all of a sudden you replicate it and you do recurring revenue. Even like the irrigation example in South Africa, I think each new opportunity is like, hundreds of units is what they're bringing us into, which is great. So it's a lot of work to get the first one, but then all of a sudden the machine starts moving on its own. AB Dynamics does retrofits for automobile companies across the world for test tracks. So they put this in a vehicle, and so then they don't have to have a person driving over the rumble strips and, torquing and all the issues you have with the body when you're doing testing. And they have deployed our technology in more than 15 countries now globally. And so we keep working with them and Paul's team on new certifications for different countries that we sell that into. And then the last example I'm going to have here is just a pictorial example, but we brought Justin on about 6 months ago or so to focus on rural broadband, because there's a lot of money being allocated to rural broadband. Jim Tom's helping out locally in Kentucky with his relationships with the different politicians. Rocky has brought us into specific meetings, and we're actually making further progress in Kentucky, but we're focusing Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia right now. And this is Main Street Mesh. The guys, they want to focus, this is it's more of a recurring revenue model for the service providers that we're working with, even though we've been pitching it, and the politicians like the connect the unconnected in the hollers, which I learned are places in Kentucky that are in the middle of like a valley where you don't see much sun because, you got the mountains blocking it. But so this is a big focus of ours as well. So that's what I wanted to show from an application perspective. And then I have, I have one more critical slide, because this is what Bernard and Lisa and Charles spend a lot of the time on a daily basis, is as you guys heard in the videos, we sell through channels. The reason we sell through channels is because it's easier to teach people how to fish than it is for you to catch all the fish yourself. So every day we're working on finding new partners and new vertical markets, and we spend a lot of time, the sales engineers spend all the time teaching those partners how to fish so that they can sell Ragent successfully on their own. And we have distributors is the orange throughout the world, because we have to have distributors strategically located to be able to handle the different currencies. And then we have partners throughout the world in different markets. And today we're up to 304 partners. Distributors, is it like 14 distributors? I know. 16, all right, the one must be covered up there. So 16 distributors, and we continue to expand that, because anywhere where there's not a partner is an opportunity for us to bring a new partner on board. So the last thing I'd like to end with is a couple of announcements, and these are surprise announcements. So I'd like everyone to congratulate Bernard Taliaferro on being promoted to Vice President of Channels. Congratulations, Bernard. Very well deserved, buddy. And then last but not least, I'd also like to congratulate Stephen Griggs on being promoted to Vice President. Well deserved, guys. And that's the way I'm going to close.
I'm Alice DeSanto. I'm the VP of Global Marketing for Rajant, and it's a pleasure to be up here with you today. Everyone matters. In my mind, there's 179 people, and I know they're not all here today, that have the same possibility as Gary and Peter and Mike. Same possibility as Bernard and Stephen, who we just celebrated right now. And one of the grandest things about working for Rajant is that under the leadership of Bob and Paul, we have the permission to fulfill that possibility. So as you're watching, and I'm sharing with you a couple of things today, I want you to see where you can plug in and take that possibility and that potential and move it to the next level, because it really is about a we conversation, and you are a part of everything we do in marketing. So the first thing that I want to tell you is that our goals, we have targets, the team has targets. And so each and every day when we're weighing, should we do this, should we do that, these targets are up in front of us. The other thing that underscores those targets is how we get there. And Bob talked about it, Rajant time. So it's all about speed to market. I mean, everybody is out there running and gunning, and I mean our competition. So we've got to be outrunning them and outsmarting them every single day. And then our team is really focused on doing things with excellence. A lot of times the word perfection comes up, and you can get stuck in iteration after iteration and not even be able to get out of your own way. But if you strive for excellence, it gives you the permission, again, to move to that next level without being stuck in the constant grind. And you are all a part of that. One program that we started a couple of years ago, we just got done seeing the slide about the number of distributors and the channel partners that we have in reselling. With all of them all around the world, what greater power can there be than amplifying their voice in the marketplace? So we started a couple of years ago having them focused on sharing their story and evangelizing for Rajant. We've been running it now for 2 years. And we work directly with the KMDs, the KMPs, and the KMPPs. And the only reason that we don't start with the KMAs is because we really, we're in that grace period. We're still dating, right? And we want to see what potential that they have, and if they too are people that are going to be truly evangelists for the Rajant product. One of the changes this year, because I've been running this on my own over the last 2 years, is to add Liz to the mix so that she can work directly with the channel partners, and I can spend a lot of time with our distributors. So we'll definitely be ramping it up there. And just to kind of give you a sense, again, where do you come in? Marketing as a vantage point of, where we sit and who we talk to, but you're out there in the trenches. You're getting to see the next person, and all it takes is one person at any of these channel partners to take them from somebody that can be, potentially focused on engineering, but then hire in somebody else that has the aptitude to do that promotion in a marketplace that we aren't necessarily familiar with, in an industry that we're still learning about. So please, as you continue to develop your relationships and have your phone calls at the channel level, please bring them to marketing so that we can plug them into the concierge marketing program. Some of the successes that have come from that, and this is really some near-term stuff, the Accubus case study has come up, and why this is so important is because we actually don't work one-on-one with the customers. So the pure gold is attaining the permissions that we can get at the customer level, at the end user level, and channel partners are integral to this. The other thing is about taking individual websites. I just have one up here. This is one of our latest victories of our latest distributors, where they are solely focused on Rajant, and that's their homepage, just a snapshot of their homepage. So hats off to them in Africa. And then lastly, when we were just coming out of the pandemic last year, we were able to pull off a third summit. And that was really the brainchild of Madison Technologies, and taking into the account that our summit and people that normally are coming from that part of the world can't be with us here in the US or even in Europe. So they worked together with us to make that happen. Okay, did everybody notice that the website changed? Yes. Thank heavens. Okay, so that was launched at the end of March, and some of the things that we've got still in the works here are the partner page just got done over the last week. We have rural broadband, which Jeff just mentioned, so that page and brochure is going up eminently. A focus on that indoor. So we're taking the warehouse space, the warehouse automation space, and making that a more global approach to all things indoor, and then also reworking our healthcare page. Some of the enhancements that you see already up there are meet us there. So to remove friction from any type of trade show activity that we're doing, if you go to our events page now, you can click on a button that says meet us there. And whether that person is going to attend or not, they can instantaneously make a Calendly appointment with any salesperson that's the lead in that particular industry. So that's a great ad. And there's SEO activation and optimization and customizations coming. So as we begin to look at the visitors that are coming to the site, we can tell from their IP addresses where they're coming from, so that all of the wealth of information that's contained on the website can be curated to exactly what their industry need might be, and they won't have to necessarily run through the sea of information. So that technology is being added. Right now, these are just a couple of stats of where we are and how things are moving in the right direction with our website. LinkedIn. We've gone since, in the past couple of years, we have about 6,000 more followers than we had just a few years ago. And that is in large part to you liking, sharing, and just, being super active in that space for us. And I truly appreciate that. The team truly appreciates that. We also added this past year paid LinkedIn ads. And the industries that we focused in on are the indoor space, public safety, and mining. And what's really significant about this is that with these ads and really finally fine-tuning the targets for these, we're breaking through and getting to key job titles and key decision makers without any interplay. So really working well there. Just a couple of the examples of the leads that came in and what is actively being worked on to share with you in the 3 different industries. Well, this has your name all over it. There is no way that we have product awards, and these are just the 2 that we've gotten in the last year, or our employee awards without the surveys that you all responded to. So thank you very much for all of that work. Boy, and we had a great party down in Moorhead back in September, didn't we? That was tremendous. The space down there, there's a bright future. There'll be even more people sitting with us in the years to come based on all of the great progress that we're making down in that part of the United States. Our summit. A lot of the components that we had out in this year's summit we're bringing and sharing with you today. I hope that you're feeling it and you'll provide feedback on how that's going for you. We had a record crowd this year. Really positive feedback, really great interaction. Just so all of you know, this is not us talking to partners. This is us talking with partners and sharing bright ideas together in a very collaborative way. And it is a lot of hard work. It is fun, but we couldn't do it without the partners, and we're thrilled to celebrate them. For any of you that participate in the trade shows, we really have upped our game in the professionalism this year of how the booth looks and feels and the ease of setup. So this is just a sampling of what we have out there. These are 10 by 10 or 10 by 20 configurations, and we're getting, again, a lot of good feedback on our presence and making a stronger word for Ragent out in the marketplace. Another thing that we've added is communication consistently. So before every show and then following after every show, we send out pre-invitational invites. Again, we send them, and it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to make time at our booth, because they might not be able to go. There still could be travel restrictions. The point is that they get these communications and that they're opening them, they're reading them, and then they're taking next step actions to engage with us, whether in person or still virtually on the phone or through email. So that's really fantastic. And then following it up with the thank you notes. Strategic partners. Jeff showed you all of the different accomplishments that we've had with different partners. Continue to keep an eye on where their next opportunities are. Again, part of the we conversation. One of the bright spots, yes, we're going back to Spot for that bright spot with the Boston Dynamics. I won't take the time to show the video, but I do encourage you, you can get to the landing page about Boston Dynamics by going to our homepage and clicking at the top, and it'll bring you right there so that you can find out all of this different information about their press release and the video that they made. They devoted about just less than 2 minutes specifically to Ragent in this particular kinetic mesh video. Videos, well, thanks to Taylor, who's here yet again videoing. We did at least 25 since the last All Hands last year. Our brightest one, it was the one that was focused on, again, a case study that was attained through permission through the channel at the Tennessee Mines in collaboration with our channel partner and ADR, the robotics partner. It was the most watched and most fastly consumed over a short period of time of any of our videos. So we continue to look for more of those opportunities. The one that we were able to capture and just got posted last week was with the partner recruitment. When we do these recruitment or advocacy videos, we're not putting words in our partners' mouths. That's why, again, it's so wonderful that they take the time and they show their enthusiasm. And if this resonates with you and you find that the words that they're sharing at this time authentic to you and would be of value to others that you interact with on a regular basis, I encourage you to share. We're going to play the latest video, but we'll also have a call to action for you to do something for us and get your friends to do something for us. We're just shy of what we need to have the right amount of subscribers to our YouTube page. So if everybody could go there and send others to the YouTube page, we'll get over the 1,000 that we need to take the channel to the next level. You get a whole bunch more bells and whistles and discoverability if we can get over that threshold. So please do that.
We were asked to become a Ragent partner by our customer, and we reached out to several other partners across the country, and they spoke very highly of Ragent.
It doesn't matter if you're the smallest guy to the biggest guy, they give you support throughout. It's the relationship that they're building with their people.
When we start working with Ragent, it was part of the long thinking of the ecosystem, is how you can integrate different components to make better solutions. One of the things that I'm seeing is how all those different solutions can empower one another. That's the vision that I think Ragent is focused on, connectivity, mesh, and working together, and then we're happy to be part of this ecosystem, this family.
The best part about Ragent that I found, and having worked extensively in the wireless market for the last 28 years, their stuff did what it said they were going to do. And so when you have product like that, it just made it so much easier to be a partner with them.
One of the key factors and benefits for our relationship with Ragent is the support with a distributor. You know, if you've got a really good distributor and you can forecast stock and you can work with the distributor to get you the products on time, then it's repeat business. The guys are coming back and back because they know that you've got the stock and that you can provide the solution when they need it.
I really appreciate the relationship with Ragent. They're very easy to contact and they're always there if I need anything. They have a different culture in Ragent.
They'll be there from the first meeting to the deployment, the commissioning, and then they'll also follow up with the customer a few years down the road. But also the equipment is just so bulletproof. It just works.
Every project that I'm bringing to the table is being accepted with a lot of respect. There's a lot of smart people at Ragent that knows how to build the network. So I'm bringing the problems, the challenges, and they know how to solve those. We tested out in very harsh locations and very difficult project and succeeded.
Our customer they're always asking us, well, what's the guarantee? How is it going to work? Is it going to work? What's your experience? And we can always tell them very confidently that it will work. If anyone were to call me about our experience with Ragent, I would speak very highly, not only of the product, but engineering, sales support. It's a true partnership.
Just a little bit about what kind of press and the media that we're attaining. Thanks to everyone in the room who contributes articles or puts their name to different offerings that we do have in all the different industries. Couldn't do it without you. I really hope you saw breaking news last week. This is a new communication that we're sending to our entire database. And people paid attention. There was tremendous click-through. I think 33% of the people engaged with the breaking news, which featured the Acubus case study last week. There was also an increase of about 40% new traffic to the website. So all good stuff. And again, you're part of that equation. Another thing that has gone on that involves getting all of you up to speed on what's going on in sales and marketing is our coffee breaks. Was asked to start a program, and it's really not a program, it's a conversation down in Moorhead, Kentucky, just before COVID. And I really want to thank Brad for making that introduction and making that connective tissue, and for Dave Keaton to allow it to happen. So we sit down as a team in Moorhead and we go through things and we talk about stuff. And I haven't been down there in a couple of months now, or I think, and so we're definitely due to have another one in the next couple of weeks. But this idea and notion of connecting the entire organization to the sales and marketing efforts on a more regular basis is going to be kicked off in Arizona. Talk to Chad out at the summit, and we're going to give it a go. So can't wait to do that as well. All right. Everybody has the potential. We definitely have the permission from Bob and Paul. So the possibilities are endless for what we can do for the UNICEF event this year as a team. Music is a universal language. I think we all speak it, and we'll be seeing some people play it, and whether it's karaoke or on guitars or drums tomorrow. But we've got a great opportunity here to do really great work together. We've done tremendously over the past 2 years, but now we're changing it up a bit. We're going to do 4 hours of music this year. That's the goal. It's going to be a combination of a live event, but also include the hybrid so that we get participation from around the globe, whether that's at the channel level, at the employee level, or higher end professional talents and bands that we don't even know about yet. We're going to do it gala style with food and drink. We're going to do it what we believe to be the week of Giving Tuesday, which is the 29th of November. So we're still working out some dates with the local UNICEF chapter here in Philadelphia, but we want to plug ourselves into the energy of giving around the holiday season. And again, what can we do together? Everybody's got that 6 degrees of separation or 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Who do you know? Who do you know who knows somebody else who might be able to talk to somebody else who could then contribute, whether it's, with a band or with a solo act or just, who knows? But what can you do to bring it and share with them and get them to plug into what we're doing to make a difference for UNICEF and hungry children? We invite all the Ragent musicianship. And we're going to kick off promotions. So in the past couple of years when we started, you might have noticed promotional activity happened, maybe like end of September, October. We're actually going to start in the middle of the summer. And what's really cool is that we're going to do it around a theme called I'm an Orange Box Kid. What I didn't know, and maybe you didn't know either, is that the whole notion of the orange boxes that kids carried around back at Halloween time, and going back decades, that originated here in Philadelphia. So we're going to marry together adults from this area with children and teach people in less than 1 minute the transition that UNICEF has gone through from the Orange Box kids of yesteryear to Orange Box kids today, all working together to feed every child. Thank you very much.
Real quick, I just want to take a couple of minutes to say a few things before I literally rush through this presentation. The sales engineering team development makes a wonderful product. The design make this wonderful product. Brad's team, they manufacture the product. Our sales team, they sell the product. The sales engineering team, they go out into the real world. They make this stuff work. They make the promises come true. And there's no shortage of true, you heard Bob talk about the can-do attitude that Gary Anderson brought to the company. It's very much lived by the sales engineering team. These guys go out, and they go out to some not so great places, right? Because nobody puts a mine in a tropical paradise, right? So they go out to some really, really hard places. Carl's all over Africa. Zach, man, he's all over the world. That Colombia thing, that was Zach. Cody, nobody puts oil pumps in a great place in the country, right? So Cody's all over the place too. These guys are road warriors. And they're taking the technology that Paul's team is developing, and they're putting it to use in real world situations. So you get to take this box, and everybody says it just works. Well, it does. It's awesome that it just works. But there's a lot of things that have to work with it in order, because you can turn on a box, green light, everybody's happy, but if it's not doing the work, what good is it? It's a pretty box, right? So as they go out and they employ these nodes, and they get these networks working, and they get the technology working, the very first thing on everybody's mind, I say it all the time, protect the brand, right? Quality is everything. You heard Bob Skina talk about it many, many times. Jeff's talked about it. Quality is everything, all right? So the responsibilities that these guys are going out and doing, they're providing the proof of concepts that get these people to buy our products. I've always said I don't have to sell you a breadcrumb. I just got to get you to try one. You try it, you'll buy it, because they are just that easy to use. All right. I was just at New Jersey Transit. When was I there? Oh, this weekend. And yeah, and they were so surprised, they were so surprised that they don't have to actually do anything except pull it out of the box, plug it in, and they just work. They just mesh. They were so shocked at the fact that there's no pre-configuration that has to happen in order to make them work. Turn it on, and it works. And they were just blown away by that. So these guys go out and they do all of these proof of concepts. Jeff's team gets them into the door. Then it's a matter of executing, as Bob says. Okay? Ragent does provide a high quality product, and it is the premier product in the market today. It really is. And when I say market, Jeff said that we're not only a mining company anymore, right? And we're not. we're starting to see a lot of success in so many different verticals now that, we've actually had to, back in the mining days, you take your breadcrumbs out, you put them on trailers, you put them on infrastructure, everybody's got an omnidirectional antenna, you turn them on, everybody works. And that was the beauty of it, is you just throw them up there, you get enough coverage, and everything just works, right? Well, now, with all of these different markets that we're into in agriculture and in robotics and the indoor spaces, we've had to redefine the way that we're deploying these nodes. And our sales engineering team has had to adapt with that. And they've had some really, really great innovations in how not only do we deploy differently, but also offered suggestions to development and Dave's team in order to innovate, different features and changes and things like that to make the product even better in some of these other spaces that aren't necessarily just mining or military. Okay? So, I already said that. So all of these different verticals, that we're going after, Rajant is bringing a whole level of technology to the party. For instance, we were just at the that Modex show in Atlanta, March, I think it was. The big buzzword that I figured out that they love to hear is connectivity, because they don't have any. They're doing all of these robotic deployments, and they're relying on the warehouse Wi-Fi that somebody put up 100 years ago that barely works, and they're going to run robots on this thing. And they're always talking about how they'd have no connectivity at all. And it took me about a day of talking to people at this show before I realized all we have to do is tell them connectivity. We have connectivity, and show them. And we actually took one of the Vorbeck vests that had absolutely no place in a warehouse, but it did show, because we have video. Everybody likes to see videos. Jeff talked about video translates really well when you're talking about demonstrating a network. We took the Vorbeck vest and a camera and had a guy watch us on his phone, and we walked clean out of between. We were streaming internet from the booth. I was wearing a vest. We walked out of the hall and outside. Still streaming, still having internet connectivity and streaming video. And the guy was just absolutely amazed. And all I had to do was talk about connectivity, and he got it. Right away, he got it. So, in order for us to continue innovating and things like that, I mean, my number one mantra is protect the brand. Always protect the brand. It's all about the quality of Rajant. It's all about we can't even tolerate perceived quality problems, right? So, just a few highlights. Carl has been working very, very hard on our training program. We've got 2 different training programs. We've got the RCNA, and then we've also got the RCNP, the professional level, right? The advanced training. RCNA has been automated. Carl was instrumental in in developing an online training program. We got with the launch of our new partner portal, we put in a learning management system. Carl is responsible for creating those courses that now everybody can take for free, end users and partners. You can take it for free, all the videos, and get yourself certified as a Rajant Network Administrator, the RCNA, sorry. I'm trying to rush. But then the professional course was always done in Wickenburg because we always had so much equipment and all this other stuff. Well, we changed the course now. There's still a little bit of hands-on, but it's more wired network heavy. So everybody, we've got switches and we've got radios, and people are building VLAN trunks and programming switches, everything, all the difficulties that they run into in the implementation for the wired side and things like that, we're teaching them how to overcome. And that's largely due to the efforts of Carl and Phil and the rest of the team. So, and this year marks the very first time that we were able to actually put one of these courses on in Australia, so international. So now we've taken this thing on the road. We've done one here at the Desmond. We did one in Houston. We've done them in Canada. Now we've done one in Australia. Next we've got South Africa, and we've also got Latin America that we're gonna start focusing on. Okay? So we're taking the training on the road. Jeff mentioned Mesh Tracer. This is another big push. This is a whole nother system that we've had to learn and that we've got to learn to demo. And it's still new, and we're still working on it. We've actually set up a demonstration network down in the Moorhead facility, so that ostensibly any of the sales team, sales engineers should be able to demonstrate live a mesh tracer, give a mesh tracer demo. Our new LTE Peregrine. So we had some initial testing done down in Australia. Phil conducted it. So we've got port deployments out of 6 of the 7 continents. Got our eye on Antarctica. All right. As soon as we can find a good reason. All right. Also, we talked about Boston Dynamics. Zach's been very instrumental in getting things working, and Dave Acker as well. In getting Boston Dynamics, Rajant Boston Dynamics married up. All right, we are the preferred mesh network for them. I do want to take a moment to talk about this. This is the FuseGrow opportunity. This was basically a trial, and it started out just this huge juggernaut with Microsoft and a bunch of other stuff. What ended up happening? This was a trial based on a search and rescue scenario, right? So they took a big truck out there, and you can see all the equipment and stuff, and they were again in a tropical location, right? And they turned this into a scenario where they could maintain connectivity and things like that, and conduct a search and rescue operation, which was successful. Only to find out that later it turned into a real scenario where they actually had to go out and find somebody in the outback. And they used our equipment to do it. They couldn't get the competition up quick enough. They had problems with the competition, so they called us out there, and I don't think we ever found anybody. But not because the technology didn't work. Outback's a big place. Kelly was very instrumental. This was an opportunity that Sagar brought. These are car carriers, and they were looking for ways to monitor because this thing is filled with. I think Kelly was talking about Lamborghinis and Ferraris and Bentleys and stuff like that. So they wanted a way to monitor the inside hull of the ship, and they wanted connectivity inside the hull of the ship. And Kelly came up with this mounting solution here, where they've got Rajant radios all throughout the inside of the ship, so they have connectivity inside. And the inside of a ship is not a great place for RF. So it was a very, very challenging implementation. So good stuff. And that's my time. Thanks for playing along.
I'm used to being one of the last in the morning and us being behind time. I'm Mike Van Rasten. I'm the president of Military and Government Markets. And I got 4 slides and a video, and I will be quick. Okay, we are hardworking, trying to get into a lot of the DoD's efforts as it relates to 5G. And the idea here is our radios with the 5G modem in it. Think of the LTE radio. This is just trying to do it and get paid to do it with respect to 5G. Because as we all know, there's lies, damn lies in 5G, right? I mean, 5G is not going to be like the commercials say, but nevertheless, the Department of Defense, at least, is spending about $500 million a year to try to use it when it becomes prevalent around the world. We hopefully will find out, Ed, about a month from now, hopefully? Yeah, okay. So more to follow on that. Hopefully I got good news later this summer. Okay, we have worked a lot with swarms. I think Don may have presented stuff in the past. We had the big experiment swarms in an urban environment. Urban environments are tough, not only militarily, but obviously from an RF perspective with all the natural obstacles. And then you have indoors, and there's just a lot of advantages somebody in the defense in an urban environment to have against an attacking force. So we partnered with Northrop, or the company that Bob likes to talk about a lot. We had a series of events that these vignettes, as you can see on the screen, as we kind of did a walk, crawl, run, which culminated in a major event, and we got up to 194 connected drones and unmanned ground robots, if you will, all controlled with our radios, one controller with some AI software that Northrop built. Basically, what was neat about it was that what was happening was the drones were tasking themselves. In other words, finding out, hey, what capabilities do you have on this drone? Hey, I need surveillance here, or I need bomb detection there, or whatever the case may be. There was a whole series of different sensor suites that were on these robots and drones. It's kind of eerie. I'm going to show you a video of machines acting in unison, but it's kind of sci-fi, if you will. Yeah, so you can see that, and the idea here is to be able to, I can tell you that these are very deadly scenarios for soldiers, right? Urban environments. There's just too many advantages an enemy would have, and to be able to do some of those functions from a robot or a drone is really important. And as we stand right now, this is really from an operational sense. The military doesn't really know how it wants to. This is kind of the embryo stage. I mean, drones obviously are in heavy use, right? And you guys have all seen bombings from drones and surveillance from drones. But using drones in the offense to prosecute a military threat is somewhat new, right? And the idea here is to limit the loss of U.S. service member life trying to execute military threats. And we really are on the cutting edge of this. 194 connected, all by our radios. All in this wild-looking mesh with these little ant things rolling around in a city. It's kind of eerie, but it has the potential to be very effective in the future. The other couple things, and Chad's going to brief later, I think tomorrow. Yeah, Chad will brief tomorrow about some of the crypto module work, but we have major developments happening in that area. Expect to sign about $14.5 million contract here in a couple weeks or so for continued development of the high bandwidth crypto module. That's to be followed by the next phase of it 2 months later, even though we're not going to complete, obviously, $14 million of work in 2 months, but it was just easy contractually to pull all this off. Just under 10 million, so very heavy in that work. So I won't steal your thunder, Chad. You can talk to at least some of the details of what we're doing there. The other thing that we're doing that's it's not there yet, but hopefully it happens. We're partnered with about 4 other companies, a company called Mandis Group, and a couple other companies. I can't even pronounce their names. And basically trying to, you guys are all aware of what's happening in the Ukraine in the various efforts. We've not only answered requests from the U.S. government, but we're also partnered for just communications. We've responded separately as a company, and we're also part of an effort with some artillery, an artillery capability that not only has artillery but also has drone hives. Basically, if you can think of 30 drones in a box, all with our radios. The artillery pieces have our radios. The idea behind those drone hives is to be able to use them for targeting. Because, obviously, shooting artillery is not a precision-guided affair. That's why they call it bracketing. The more accurate you can be, the less collateral damage, even though, God, what you see on the news, it doesn't seem like anybody cares about collateral damage, nor killing innocents. But so that is being worked very heavily. There was a meeting in the Ukrainian embassy in D.C. a couple weeks ago, and they want to move forward. It's a lot of money. Don't know where to come from. Lord knows we collectively as a nation are spending a lot of money to help the Ukrainians. And we're also consistent with that. The UK government, we're partnered with a UK company, and we are responding to a request from the UK government on that same token, not with artillery, but with some drones from a UK company. But I kept it short. I got you to the break. I used about 7 minutes of my 15 minutes. So break time.
So Jeff will be presenting next about security. Oh, and Alan Tim as well, our IT team. And so I just want to help with the intro here to let you know that what Jeff does is completely supported at the top of the company by Paul and me. He's really our emissary. We have obligations because of our defense-related work, and we take them serious. So we give Jeff the resources and his team the resources that he needs to do his job. Just a little background. We on Instamesh, which is our core technology at Ragent, we've spent over $50 million at this point on developing that platform. And so multiple times, I think at least 3 that I'm aware of, that the Chinese Department of Defense has used front companies to try to steal our technology. And we've had some probes from Iranian companies as well through front companies. So it's not a joke for us. We understand that the technology that you all have built is extraordinarily valuable and is perceived as such by folks who aren't our friends. So we really don't want, for multiple reasons, our product showing up somewhere because the Chinese stole it and all of a sudden there's $50 radios around the world. And then we're an American company. We do work for the Department of Defense. Our technology is used to protect the lives of American soldiers. We don't want that stolen either. So for all kinds of reasons, all good reasons, it's necessary that we protect the intellectual property here at Ragent, and also protect each other from people who have negative intent. And Jeff leads that program here, and I just wanted to introduce him and let you all know how important it is to us what it is he does. Jeff? There you go.
Thanks, Bob. So like Bob said, we've got a program for security because of our contracts with the government. And I want to talk a little bit about why we have the security program and why it's important. Obviously, it's a requirement if we want to continue to work with the government contracts, but really the heart of the matter is that the government needs the industry to provide the essential products and services that they need for their programs, whether it's lawn care or satellites. So we're part of that program. The procedures that they pass down to us that we have to follow are designed to protect lives of soldiers and allies. And that's really the main reason why, the biggest reason why we do it. It's not just because that it's required. And probably the number one reason why Radiant's involved is because our products save lives. And that's probably the best reason I can think of why I come in and do this every day. So I'd like to ask you guys, as part of Radiant, whether you're part of RHI or you're part of Radiant Classic, to participate and help out with the security program. The first thing that you can do to help is training. We have a number of annual requirements that come along part of the program. There's both from security and from IT training programs, and there'll be emails that come out periodically. And my request to you guys is to please complete the training. It doesn't take that much time, but it's very helpful for everybody involved. There's also contract requirements for training that are specific to each program. There's role-based training depending on what your jobs are, and there's always going to be procedural briefings, technical bulletins, things like that come out as part of the training program. Why is that important? Again, it's required, of course, but really it keeps us mindful of our security posture and our requirements. So one of the biggest things that training helps with is procedures. Everything has a procedure. We have new things coming along all the time, new programs for CUI. Well, what is CUI? Well, it means controlled unclassified information. Well, how do we handle that? Well, there's procedures for that. And so the training will help us understand what those procedures are and how to safeguard that information. And again, all the safeguarding and the procedures is all designated to protect lives. And that makes that super important. The second thing that you can do to help is reporting. This is a big hurdle because nobody really wants to be ratting out their friends or even themselves. Like if I come and tell you, oh, I got a speeding ticket the other day, it's actually reportable if you have a clearance, but am I going to lose my clearance over that? So no one's really wants to step up and say those kinds of things. But it's important. I think the kinds of problems that we see on a day-to-day basis might be small, and if we can catch them while they're small, we can prevent bigger problems from coming down the road. We can make changes to the program to adjust and keep everybody on track. So I think that's important. The third thing that you can do to help is to support the entire security team. That includes me, that includes IT, that includes Shannon in Kentucky and all of her, not Kentucky, here in Arizona, and all of her team down there, sorry. One of the things I want to point out is that there's a lot of requirements, and it seems like it's hurdles and hoops we have to jump through. I guess the point is what we do at Radiant is hard. Breadcrumbs are hard. If it was easy, everybody would be doing them. The requirements for this are hard, but my job is not to make it hard, but to actually make it easier for you guys. I'm a facilitator. I'm going to try to make the process smooth. The IT team is here to make the process smoother for you guys, to try to bring these requirements into our process without overburdening you guys. So it's important to keep that in mind. Another thing you can do to help us out is to speak up. If you have questions, if you're not sure about something, ask. You're probably not the only one wondering about it. And if there's something that I forgot to mention in my training, then I can fix that if I know about it. It's important to speak up. If you see something, there's a mantra in the security community. If you see something, say something. It kind of goes along with reporting. So don't be afraid to come and talk to us about anything. And then finally, again, I think cooperating with the IT team is probably going to be the biggest effort. They have the most changes coming up that are going to have the biggest impact on everybody. So I'm going to pass the rest of this off to them to let them talk about that.
Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's well. Hope everybody's doing good. First, I want to thank Teresa, the rest of the marketing people, Liz, Suzanne, for helping put this together. We've grown a lot, and I know how much work it is involved in putting something like this together. And while I originally wanted to rush through a lot of that, we do have a lot of new people, so there's a few points I want to spend some time focusing on. One of the keys to Ragent's success is that we have the skills to solve other people's problems. And that largely comes from our intellectual property, and we need to protect that as much as we can, really at all costs. So everything that follows as far as information security goes and cybersecurity is all based on protecting what makes Ragent valuable. Bob stole a few of my words in saying, we don't want, our material to be cloned, and have somebody else producing $100 radios. So, and we do have real threats, and the threats come from foreign governments interested in learning how our military systems work and undermining them or circumventing them. Threats also come from other corporate entities who would very much like to compete with us, as well as just, I don't want to say run of the mill, but there's a lot of people that are out there just in it for the money. And ransomware attacks are the thing that scares us the most. We do a great deal to protect against all these threats, but we also have to position ourselves for the day that something inevitably gets through. Jeff touched on new security requirements that are coming down, largely by way of our government contracts, and now that we're trying to become prime on other projects as well. They're quite burdensome. They're so burdensome, in fact, that most of the industries affected by them push back because in many cases they're almost impossible to manage. So they're being reformulated as we speak. The new final requirements are still not out yet. So the requirements that we're facing are in change. They're fluid. But they will impact our day-to-day operations. And the IT team, we're trying to do everything we can to minimize that impact and try to keep everybody as productive as possible. Part of that is the ongoing recurrent training. There is some overlap between all employees as well as cleared individuals. We apologize for that, but it doesn't hurt to reinforce that training. It's only a few minutes a year, and it just helps maintain awareness so that we're interacting, particularly with email. We'll talk about that some more later, that we always exercise care and be conscious of what actions we're taking. We've done a great deal to secure the network. Ultimately, the remaining vulnerabilities are the ones that we ourselves accidentally introduce, by way of messages we open, attachments we open, sites we visit, attachments that we download. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes technology that's being implemented to comply with these new CMMC requirements. Most of them are going to be invisible to everybody, but there's a great deal of technology, money, and time being spent on implementing those requirements. As part of the ongoing training, we've engaged in recurrent, fish tests with an outside agency. And we've done very, very well in the past. We're all really, really proud of everybody. But there's been times where not a single, fish test email was clicked through. But good news, bad news, the agency is also getting really, really good at making their phishing tests. So on the last one, we did have a reasonable amount of click-through. It happens, we're not entirely surprised. This is all here just to help reinforce awareness and help keep everybody conscious of their actions when interacting with emails. One of the big things that's coming is we're engaging in, we hope to be deploying an enterprise-wide password management system. And this will allow you to generate cryptographically very strong passwords, manage them quite easily. You'll be able to share them within your group or with your supervisors. It'll protect you, it'll protect the company, it'll protect the assets. It will actually make everybody's life easier and make everybody's much more secure. So we hope to be announcing that shortly. We will be rolling that out enterprise-wide. The supply chain issues are affecting everyone. It's definitely affecting the computer industry, and it's taking us longer and longer amounts of time to source material for equipment requests and to properly equip new hires or even replace older aging gear. So just keep that in mind. Lead times are up everywhere, including in our industry. And there's a great deal. We're spending a lot of money and a lot of time revamping part of our infrastructure behind the scenes in the server room. With managing our virtualization of servers and improving our backup strategy. A lot of that is all happening behind the scenes and is not visible to everybody, but there's a lot of work being done. And I don't know how much details I should bore you guys with, but there's a pretty extensive effort taking place behind the scenes to help further secure the company and everybody's individual work. I think that's all I want to cover here. Did you want to add anything, Tim?
Yeah, that should be good.
Okay. Try to get us back on track. And yes, we may be having an impromptu QA Thursday morning in the tent outside, 9:30, excuse me. If anybody wants to drill down in further into what some of the implications of the CMMC requirements might be, we'll be there to field any questions. And with that, thank you all for your time.
Next is a group called RHI, Rajant Health. And I thought, since there's so many new folks here, I'd get a little background on how this happened. This is also, RHI is probably a result of COVID. And you don't always want to leave me in a building alone. So, things can happen. It's a question whether that's an unfettered good or not, that things can happen. So actually starts a little bit right before the shutdown. This probably goes back to February of 2020. And I was rooting around for, shows you, let me allude to my exciting social life. On a Saturday night, I was reviewing Princeton University's online technology available for license. So while others were dancing and dining, I was reading a patent website and found some artificial intelligence technology which I thought might be useful for Rajant's core business. Called over there to Princeton, got some meetings. They had a little startup related to this AI based in Brooklyn. So Don Gilbreth and I took a little trip up to Brooklyn, and COVID was becoming a thing. China was shut down, and people were dying like crazy in Italy, and we hadn't shut anything down in the U.S., but COVID was certainly on people's minds. So this startup presentation in Brooklyn involved a company that was applying some of these artificial intelligence and neural network techniques to wearable devices. And as they were going through their presentation, they were talking about applying AI to data from a wearable that would allow the AI to determine or indicate for diseases. And they had shown it could work with 4 diseases. This wearable device was a watch made by an MIT spin-out called Empatica. It was a couple $1,000 watch. It wasn't inexpensive. It was sending data to your smartphone, and the neural network by the Princeton guys was resident in the smartphone. And they had shown that with a high degree of accuracy, above 90%, they could indicate for certain diseases. I think it was diabetes, schizophrenia, bipolar disease, and depression were the 4 diseases they had done clinical trials on and shown that this technology could work. So in the course of the conversation, I asked them, gee, do you think you could indicate for COVID? And of course, like when the Kennecott guys asked us, could we put our stuff on 160 trucks? There's only one answer, right? So they were like, oh, yeah, sure. We could absolutely indicate for COVID. And what would it take to do that? And they said it would take a clinical trial. My only connection to the medical community was through Rick Hevner, who's on our board. Rick was chairman of the Jefferson Healthcare System, so I kind of accidentally had a lot of relationships into the healthcare world that I hadn't really thought about mining or utilizing in any way. So my original intent was, when I thought of this and suggested this, that maybe we could help, was I really had no personal interest in healthcare at the time as a business or a technology. As you heard earlier, I was just adamant about businesses not being shut down. So I just thought maybe there's a way we could help get this technology disseminated. My hope was, because they had alluded to, maybe with the sensors in smartphones, you might be able to self-test with the right neural networking technology. And there's billions of smartphones in circulation. So I thought, well, geez, if you could self-test, just run a test. And, if you're sick, don't go to work, or, take the test before you go into a restaurant or get on a plane. So the vision was maybe there's a way to generate a software and an application of AI using technology already deployed that might help the world not shut down. And so I said, look, I have some relationships in the healthcare world. What do you have to do to make this possible? And they said, we need to run a clinical trial, 80 to 100 people. They'd have to, 3/4 of them have to have COVID, various stages of COVID. And we think we could develop an algorithm that would live in your smartphone and possibly use just a smartphone. And I said, all right, well, let's see if I can make this happen. And then, of course, then as the few weeks went by and the world began to shut down, the U.S. was shutting down, and you couldn't travel to Europe, couldn't travel to Italy. But I made some calls, and the Italian government was interested. And we were able to get a clinical trial passed through what's called an IRB, the Institutional Review Board of a hospital outside of Milan. If you remember, Milan was ground zero for kind of European and Western COVID. People were dying like crazy. And this was a hospital called the Hospital San Matteo, just outside of Milan in a town called Pavia. And they said they passed it like within 60 days. Normally it might take a year or 2 to get an IRB study approved. They passed it pretty quickly. I purchased what was it, like 20 smartwatches and 20 phones, and sent Gianna and my daughter, who's a scientist and was finishing up at her doctoral program at the time, and my daughter Maria is fluent in Italian. So we sent those to deliver the technology over to the hospital in Italy. And it went on for many months, and we learned a lot. We really did. We learned one thing, that yes, you could indicate for COVID using a wearable device, but you needed this expensive $2,000 watch. And it wasn't just, the phone wasn't going to be adequate, so that big idea just wasn't going to work. You weren't going to be able to disseminate a piece of software and let people self-test. But we did learn that the technology could be used to indicate for disease if you had the right kind of wearable device. And more importantly, given our reagent communications background, what really made the clinical trial work was ultimately Don Gilbreth and Zach or somebody went over. There were all kinds of problems in the hospital getting the applications to work. And the reason was the communications in the hospital were just terrible. They weren't persistent, they weren't reliable. And as we know, most of the world just assumes networks work. And we know that's not the case. And when they assume that data is always persistent, the connection never breaks. And so a lot of things in the application were that had been designed by the scientists at Princeton just didn't work in a real life practical way. They worked great in the lab, not so great in real life. The Empatica watch, very clever, very sophisticated, also not really designed for the world that exists in terms of communications. Also, that device assumed ubiquitous connectivity, that connectivity, doesn't break, and they had the way they designed their device was that they would send data, and if you lost your connection, you actually lost the data from the person wearing the watch. And another thing we learned was that they wanted the patients to wear the device for an hour and sit still for an hour. And many of these folks weren't that ill, so they were moving. And what does motion do, we found, to most data on wearable devices? Queers the data. The motion introduces drift and error. So what we learned is most of this gigantic wearable industry is based on information that is ultimately not usable. And that was fascinating as well. So many, many gaps discovered going through this process. The technology we concluded ultimately would work, but in order to have it be useful in a ubiquitous way, a lot would have to be done differently. So I hired a few AI folks, and we were kind of rooting around how could they be useful to Rajant in our core business. And this kind of introduction into healthcare was bouncing around in my brain. And as COVID was going on, I was constantly, often in the building by myself or just a few people. And I was thinking, what are our real assets at Rajant? I know at a certain level, we just go, well, Instamesh, we're mesh routing experts, which we are. But as I thought about it, I thought, that's just an expression of our expertise at the engineering level. Our engineers are really, really capable people. And what I decided to do was our aperture, our normal self-analysis is pretty focused. We have the camera lens down close to the table, and we're focused on meshing. And I just thought, maybe I'll put the camera lens on a drone and put it up 100 yards over the building and think about what do we really have as assets. And it turns out it's a lot more than just a mesh routing protocol. It's tremendous talent in the ability to design power supplies and packaging and chips and manufacturing. And we have, lo and behold, we have a global distribution channel. We're doing business in 74 countries, and we're able to generate the confidence of big companies, many Fortune 100 companies as our customers. So we have layers of skills that aren't obvious if you're looking too close. We have Dave Haney, and the Commodore team, just spectacular talent. The talent we have out in Arizona, not just in crypto, which is really, really, really world class. These people are incredible, and it's just not just in crypto hardware, but it's in FPGAs. It's the creativity of building that sophisticated capability comes out of Phoenix, and then we have this same thing all over the Malvern office. We have tremendous talent embodied in really great people. And is that so all of us have so much more capability than we're often tested to deliver on. So when I thought about sitting there thinking about COVID, I thought let me come down to the nugget of the individuals we have at Ragent and their skill set and talent and attitude. And I just thought we as a company, we're doing great things, but we're capable of other great things, more than what we're doing. And that's what inspired me, was the talent within the organization, which there's value to focus, and we have focused on our core technology. But I just looked across the entity at the people we had and the skill sets we had and the things we can do, the things people have done in their lives. And I just was moved by, wow, there's greatness here. And so I thought maybe there's a way to apply it to this new healthcare world. Remember early on I said the world's going to be very different, and we're going to deliver healthcare in different ways, and we're going to use a lot of new types of technology and new analytical tools in ways that hadn't been done before. And it was just a belief that I landed upon. So in combining that belief with looking at the talent that we had and that the talent that was available, I was just because I was going on LinkedIn and, people were home. So I was reaching out to people personally as the CEO and doing the interviews. People were like, my first interviews with the CEO. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm doing it a little different here. So I started finding really great talent. And I said, let's create a new entity called Ragent Health to begin to apply some of our skill sets internally with some new folks and see if we can do something to grow the whole company as a whole. And that's the premise and predicate for this. It was looking at the company and what's been built, starting with Paul and Dave and all the way back to the original team. What have we created and what are the true capabilities of this entity? And I thought we could do more and do interesting things. And that led to the creation of Ragent Health, which I think is about 20 people. And they're well dressed and handsome and young, and it's great. It's inspirational. So that's the lead in. So there's Gianna Scana and folks, and they'll tell you the Ragent Health story, but that's how we got here. That's why we're doing this. And this is 80% owned by Ragent. So anything that we're doing here benefits all of us. And a lot of the first product, I think, will end up as Ragent product line as well. So that's how we got to be this.
I'm Gianna Scana. I'm Dad's eldest daughter. I have my PhD in biomedical science that I got from Temple University last year. And my story of joining RHI is kind of that Emma and I fell backwards into RHI accidentally and kind of have ended up really loving our time here and enjoying being with the entire team. But so to kind of give you the lead in for how we all ended up here together, I worked on that initial clinical trial at Dad's behest early on in COVID and learned a lot about what it was like to be involved in the medical side of research science. So I had gotten my PhD in something related to cardiovascular physiology and worked a lot in a lab that focused on finding ways to make the heart repair itself better after a heart attack. So I'd had a lot of exposure to what research and medicine and science were like on that side of the bench. And then during COVID, I got an exposure to kind of the hospital side and the actual getting to interact with patients and really change. Hopefully, at the time, we were thinking we could really help the whole world. So it was definitely an inspiring moment in our kind of life as an organization as we were kind of building this idea to be able to change people's lives through technology, which is ultimately what Ragent has done in the industrial space and what we're trying to do in the medical space. So ultimately, we went on and I joined, I think, in March of 2021 after kind of helping Ragent Health in the background as I was finishing my PhD. And as we came on, the kind of aim of the company at the time was really to figure out how to use AI and apply it to any type of data. So the initial type of data that we were thinking about was data from wearable devices, because that's where we'd started with COVID. But as Dad's saying, he kind of took that lens and he drew it back over Ragent. He did the same thing for RHI and realized that after we'd started with the AI team, the point was it didn't actually just have to be data from a wearable device. Any kind of data that's gathered about you and your life could be a piece of data that adds up to the profile of what is your life in terms of your health state and what is changing about you as you're getting sick. So kind of the focus of the company had become, how can we analyze any data relating to life, whether that be the life of a person or the life of a piece of technology, and from that analysis draw some relevant insight that could help to improve the future of that thing, whether it be a person or a piece of technology. So the mission of the company actually has really, and the vision of the company has become to create a healthcare assurance ecosystem, essentially enabling proactive monitoring. So as I'm sure we've all come to personally know in the last year or two, the entire healthcare system, the way that it's designed, is not a healthcare system that's designed to keep you healthy. It's designed to help you whenever you've already gotten sick. And it's very much a reactive healthcare society. But what we're trying to do here with the ability of the technology that already exists in the world and that we're designing ourselves is get a grasp on what your personal state is in the day-to-day and try and help figure out what are the best ways for you to continue to be healthy and to get healthier if you happen to be ill at the moment that we begin to understand you. So really try and take a step back and think of what would we like healthcare to be, rather than what is healthcare right now and how do we fix the system as it is right now. So our goal here is to ultimately integrate every type of data that exists about you, whether that be your physiological data from a wearable, your medical records from your past history, the data from your life. So do you sleep well? Do you drink coffee? Do you drink wine? All of that stuff interplays a lot in terms of your current health and your projected future health. And where Em and I come into the story is really an analysis of your genetics data. So we'll talk more about that later, but what most of us know in terms of genetics is what you've seen in maybe 23andMe. So you send your cheek swab away and you find out where your family's ancestral history is from. But that's all genetic data that's ultimately related to what brought you to where you're at and what are the potentials for what could happen in your life. And the genetics data that we focus on here is what's called RNA. So I'm sure you've heard about it in terms of the vaccines. But really what RNA is, the DNA was the blueprint for you, and then RNA is the execution of that blueprint. So taking samples of your RNA and analyzing that part of your genetics can allow you to build a file that essentially tells you what's happening at the exact second that you took that sample. So not what could you be, but what are you right now? And from the connection of those two things, along with all the other types of data, we can figure out where could you potentially be going. So that's essentially what we're working on here. And our goal today is to kind of give you guys an ability to understand what we're up to. Because you hear about Rajant Health, we're amongst the building at Malvern. It's like, what are they doing down that hallway? Really, we're trying to build as much as we can. We've seen what Rajant can build, and it's an astonishing record that has been built for Rajant. Rajant is my younger sibling. So I've seen what the company can do over the course of 20 years, and I think it's a good story for what we'd like RHI to grow into. So to kind of give you an idea of how we think about data and how we are building the different pieces here, everything that you see here is essentially how we're thinking about collecting and then analyzing data. And that data can be related to, as Mutu and Mo will talk about a little bit more, it could be related to the wearable, or it could be related to some kind of industrial machine, but it also could be data related to a person. And ultimately, the processes that we're building and the tools that we're building are very foundational for all of that. So while the different applications can be in verticals that seem completely disconnected, ultimately I'd say about 80% of the technology that we're building functions to build up any of those processes. So we're really trying to think about ways we could leverage the work that we're doing across all of these different verticals. So the data can be collected from a wearable or could be collected from any IoT sensors and ingressed through a device that we internally call the cowbell. Credit to SNL for that one. But it's essentially, well, hey, and to Dad, yeah. But so it's essentially a device that allows the ingress of data. So there's a breadcrumb in there as well as CPU and GPU. So you could actually push AI models to that device. So you're collecting data, but ultimately as you begin to learn and do analytics on that data, you could push it back out. What that really means is that you'd have the capability to leverage AI that's done elsewhere in a location that doesn't constantly have access to the greater network of the world at large. So you could do AI processing in a really remote location, which would hopefully be helpful for Rajant as we kind of begin to focus on selling analytics into the Rajant network as well. And then in terms of the analytics themselves, there's a lot that goes on there. So there's some algorithm maintenance, there's processing, and that has a lot to do with cleaning the data that comes off of different devices. So one of the biggest lessons that we learned from that clinical trial in Milan was that the data that comes off of wearable devices is more often than not completely inaccurate to the data that was originally recorded on the wearable device. And there's a lot of reasons that happens, and I'll go into a little bit about them just so you can kind of get a sense for why we've made the decisions that we've made in terms of the wearable that we're building and the algorithm work that we're working on here. So one of the things that we learned was that there's a ton of inaccuracy in the data that's collected by a wearable. The more you move, the more inaccurate the data is. So the data is not actually collected in an accurate way to begin with. And then, whenever we learned about that interface between a wearable and the phone, we ultimately were able to understand why wearables assume that there's perfect connectivity. So there are actually native applications on a smartphone, whether that be iOS or Android, that seek out any application that is drawing too much power from that phone and turn it off in the background. That's why if you have a bunch of apps open on your phone and you scroll to the left and open an old one, it's not actually still open. You have to reopen it and reloads. The phone is doing that in the background because its job is to stay alive for as long as possible. So wearables, in order to not trigger that kill switch essentially on your phone, don't send data constantly. They send it at intervals. So they just send packets occasionally at predetermined intervals of time. And that means that what they're doing is sending that packet of inaccurate data. And also to avoid as expensive in terms of power, in terms of streaming all that raw data, they average the data on the wearable before they send that packet. So it was inaccurate data, averaged, and sent at already predetermined intervals that have nothing to do with perhaps how often you need that data to be updated. So we learned that early on because of that COVID wearable trial, and really that lesson has fed a lot into our planning for our own wearable here. So that's kind of the foundational thought, is really make sure that any data that you're doing analytics on is clean data, because it's essentially garbage in, garbage out. AI is only a tool, and it's as powerful as the data that it was trained on. So we're trying to keep that in our minds as we kind of do our planning here. And then there's another analytics that can be done, but let me pass it over, I think, to Mo. I think you're next, right?
Okay. All right, guys, so most of you know me as Mohammed, or AKA Mo. So I've been working at Rajant since 2020. I was originally part of the dev group and did some designs in power supply and did a couple of radios with Steve. But my original expertise has been in my master's was in microelectronics and digital systems. I was brought into this project last year around October. It wasn't planned. They just were in Italy, and some of the prototypes that we sent there for demo, they lost their battery, and there was no way to charge them. So I started doing some kind of a ghetto rework to at least get power to the battery, charge them up, so they can at least go and do the demo part. Eventually, we found out there was a bug in the firmware. We fixed that, and then they were off and running. But from that point onwards, I was kind of intrigued by what they're doing on the RHI side, and I was given the opportunity to come work there this year, and I took that opportunity. When I was brought on board, we had developed couple of different versions of the QStat hardware. Unfortunately, there were a lot of issues with that hardware that we had. Mainly, it was hardware and a combination of firmware bugs that we had there. When I started, I was told that we have these 2 watches that last for 24 hours. And there's these 6 or 7 watches that would last maybe 15 minutes, sometimes 20 or 30 minutes. So for demo, we use these, and these are what we're... So I started thinking, I was like, how are we going to do anything with this kind of fallout from a batch of only 10 or 12 boards that we built? So I got together with the rest of the team, Srini, Jack, and Carl, and we kind of started going through the firmware. The firmware originally was outsourced to a different company who developed it, and we started going through their code, and also on the hardware side, we started scoping out. From experience, I knew the problem has to be with one of the local communications on board, like I2C, SPI. Some sensor is locking up the whole bus and triggering a reset. By the way, the outside company, the way they were trying to make this hardware work, because this would lock up very frequently. So they had used a watchdog timer. So as soon as they would see that now it's locked up, they would trigger a hard reset, and now the watch is back up and running. We basically started by disabling the watchdog timer, and we found out that, well, this doesn't even last maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then locks up the hardware. So as I said, we started focusing on the local communications on the board, I2C, SPI. After a couple of days of looking at scope plots, trying to look at the code, we found out that there was a timing issue, and we weren't giving it enough time for each sensor to respond, and we were reissuing new commands while the other sensor is still sending the data back. So a lot of bus contention issue, and finally we were able to figure that out, and we had a stable hardware within a couple of weeks of starting that effort. At that point, I received an email saying that there's an invoice for tens of thousands of dollars for this outside company that we have tasked to develop the firmware for that. So I started asking around. I was like, first of all, do we even need this? And second, this is a lot of money that we're just throwing out like that. We have the expertise. If it's not in the RHI, there's expertise in Rajant side that we can tap on and pull them in if we need support. This is just outrageous. So we then decided that we're going to stop giving that money out to the third party. So the QStat is a wearable device. We're using this as a hub, and it can interface with a wide variety of sensors. It could be a wireless sensor being used as an ECG. It could be a gas sensor that could be looking at VOCs in an environment, and all of that data will be transmitted from your wearable device to either a cowbell. It's a separate processing node that you could stick on the wall, or in a mine setting, for example, or it could just stream it directly to your phone. And then we have different analytics that we apply on that data, and then provide more usable data after it's converted. As the device sits right now, there's SpIO2 information that it's gathering right now, heart rate. There's GSR sensors on board. We have demonstrated a bottom module that was giving us ECG data, but it was a wired connection. So we're moving from a wired connection through a strap from the top to the bottom module to a wireless link to the bottom sensor, and that would ease up the complexity of the band design. It won't be a custom band anymore. We are going to have regular band straps that you can just get off the shelf and just just use them. There's different varieties of these wearable devices that we're anticipating, and we're actually working on some of those at the moment. So Q-Pilot is like an internal name that we gave this project. It's basically going to comprise of maybe 100, 150 of these devices. Intention is to basically give them to our close vendors, partners, so they can give us some kind of a feedback on the ergonomics, the hardware, the data that they're seeing, and if they're happy with it or if they need additional data sets. And also gives us the a little more runtime on the hardware, so we could be optimizing battery time and making it more efficient. Right now, we're basically just capturing everything full blast at 125 hertz, so that definitely is not helping us on the battery side. The Q-Mine is basically going to be based on the Q-Pilot. The main hardware we're anticipating is going to be the same. We're adding in Wi-Fi capability along with the Bluetooth that we currently have. There's plans to also add in a GPS. Some of the uses for the Q-Mine variable would be in the mining industry, where a mine wants to track their personnel in the mines. Also for collision avoidance, so you have these big dump trucks moving around the mine. Intention is to combine the Rajant's radio and connect these variables via Wi-Fi. Have this. We're working with another vendor for tracking, and it would be basically RSSI based tracking. So collision avoidance. Basically, the truck operator would know if there's someone wearing such a device in close proximity, and if they have to maneuver, stop, or whatever, and give them enough of a distance so they can stop in time. Other uses for Q-Mine is basically your health, fall detection, like the gas sensors I spoke about, that could also be implemented, because if you're in the underground mines, you could be monitoring carbon monoxide values. QFib is mainly for medical side of things. So this would be more geared towards a nursing home or a hospital setting where someone is coming out of recovery, and we want a device that could be actively looking at your heart rate, your ECG, and providing all that information to a doctor, and that person doesn't have to be in a hospital setting. That person could be at their home or some recovery facility, and all of that data, that information could be transmitted through our phone apps or other means to the doctor, and they could make the decisions on how to adjust their treatment accordingly. So some of these are just timelines that we're trying to achieve. We're anticipating prototypes for the Q-Pilot product mid-July, and then probably expecting to go into a small build production in mid-August. A lot of these timelines are highly dependent on availability of parts. As we know, there's a major shortage of components, and we on RHI side have the same problems. There's shortage of main microcontrollers, sensors, and along with the electronics, we also have the wristband design that we're trying to also modified. As you saw in the pictures, it's a very bulky design that we currently have. It's not ergonomically, it's very, very bad. You need two people to actually wear it on your wrist. Yeah, it's pretty bad. So that effort is also is going along in parallel, but these timelines will get affected as delays come in those developments. The firmware development is also going along in parallel. So what we realized, so originally we based the design on a single core 70 megahertz microcontroller with limited RAM, limited flash, and after implementing most of the sensors, most of the features that we wanted on this device, we came to the conclusion that we may not actually have enough resources left for any future features, or if we do plan to bring any algorithms to be run on the wearable device itself, we don't have the processing capabilities. So we started a parallel effort on a PSOC-based solution, dual processor. Gives us double the memory, double the RAM, and a lot more processing speed. And of course, the second core is also present there. So that effort is actually moving along pretty good. Yesterday, we actually tested some of the code, and right now we have a PSOC that's running almost all of the STM32 code that we previously were running on the wearable device. So it's running on a PSOC now. We have the I2C connected, and we've also demonstrated that Bluetooth is also now working. So now our next step on that is to get the Wi-Fi working as well, and basically that just solidifies most of our firmware development. So on the, like I said, the watch design, that's part of our mechanical development. So I'm working with Jim on the Rajant side to help and assist in coming up with a new design, a sleeker design for this. Because the fact is, no one is going to wear, no matter how good your hardware is, if it doesn't feel good, if it doesn't look good, and ergonomically, if it's like a brick on your hand, no one is going to wear it. So for prototyping, we said, okay, fine, it is what it is, but moving forward, we need to come up with a design that everyone will wear it for a couple of hours, or basically just keep on wearing it. So Jim is helping me with that. We're hopeful that we're going to have most of it sorted out by July. And that basically just ties in with the hardware deliverables and firmware deliverables. So now Muthu is going to talk about some of the other backend.
Hi, my name is Muthu. I've been in Rajant for past 2 years. In the AI program, one of the first guys in the AI team that got hired here. So it's been an incredible journey, and I'm happy to talk about the cool stuff that we've been working on. So I know Gianna talked about some of the platform-related stuff that we've been building as part of our initiative, Health Assurance Ecosystem. So one of a suite of products that we want to bring out in the coming months is related to intelligent care management. So we want to create a platform that allows us to leverage about 80-90% of the platform that we've already built to health-related applications, occupational wellness-related applications. So we're going to use, so just to give you an idea, so the different high-level components that this platform would use, there's obviously the wearables. So we've been driving a lot of the requirements that the QStat team has been trying to develop. For example, we want access to raw data that's coming out of these wearables. That's critical for being able to use artificial intelligence on some of this data, because there's a lot of latent signals in the raw data that we can leverage while using AI. And so that's one of the requirements that we got here. And also, the QStat's also a hub, right? So it can collect data from other sensors. So for example, if we were to use this for monitoring applications and we need more than one sensor on somebody's body, we could put that and use the QStat to pipe that data through to our backend, and we can leverage that as well. So other application that another requirement that we added. The other thing that we added was, obviously we need like high data rates. So we want the more granular the data we get, the better quality outcome that we can get. And obviously the clean, error-free data is what we want to do. So a lot of the processing that we do is to clean up this data, process high data rates, and also make sure that we are robust in network connectivity in whatever regions that these kinds of platforms deployed in. So we have persistence capability in all of our wearables, the edge processing platforms, and we are robust in network intermittency that way. So some of our, we talked about the edge hub. That's essentially an ingress device from multiple wearables and multiple sensors, including our QStat. And then we've started developing some client-facing applications. Some of our stakeholders include, providers, caretakers and care providers, and also the patient themselves. So we've built applications that are customer-facing, and all of those things leverage the core data platform that we've been building over the past 2 years. So moving forward to the next slide. So this is one of the first incarnations of the use of this platform. We're trying to build an application that detects the onset and the duration of an AFib event, and create a system for the providers and the patients to leverage this information using our QStat wearable. And we're going to use the QFib variant of this of the hardware for this particular application. So and since this is a medical-related application, so we've started talking to the FDA and submitted a pre-sub with them, and we've heard back from them. They're giving us comments on how to tighten up the process and our data acquisition and the data quality and all the metrics that we need for that. So the next application is the occupational wellness monitoring. This is something that you've heard Jeff talk about, and also Mo. We are trying to use one of our first use cases is in the mining industry. So obviously the medical grade wearables, it's time consuming. The FDA certifications take time. So we want how fast can we get to the market? So we kind of decided that an occupational wellness setting could be less stringent in terms of certification requirements. So we thought that, okay, we can, what kind of hardware do we have? We can use the QMine variant of that hardware and probably just get it on people's hands and start collecting data and start making wellness related insights. So that's our second product that we've been actively working on. We've also done some consulting related work, and we're trying to leverage most of our platform to provide these kinds of insights to other customers. Like one of these customers is interested in understanding their truck operations in a huge terminal, and so they want to somehow reduce the truck turnaround time. They want the trucks to come in and out because they're moving product, and the more product they move, the more money they make. And so they don't really control the trucks or the people who own the product, but they want to get the trucks in and out. And so they've been using the AI team's efforts to try to improve that turnaround time. So we've identified holes and in their data and in how and we're trying to enable them in making data-driven decisions. And one of the things that we're actually using for this product is the mesh tracer solution, and we've proposed to fill in the gaps in how the trucks are spending their time in the facility. We're using the mesh tracer tracking tech and integrate that with our platform to make our decisions. So that's another thing that's ongoing right now. Obviously, I'm going to hand this off now to.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm going to try. Yeah.
But essentially, so the third leg of RHI is the genetics analytics, which really was born out of Em and I during our PhDs. We were right when COVID began, we were both about one experiment away from finishing our PhDs. So the way it works in academia is you have to write a paper that you were the sole first author on. So essentially you came up with the idea, you created the budget, you got money for it, you did all the experiments, and then you come to a conclusion. So we were both one experiment away from being done with that process so we could write our dissertations, working on the wearable in the background, helping to support that. But right as we got to that point, COVID began in the US and our labs got shut down. So we weren't actually allowed to go to work and do the work that was necessary in order for us to both move on with our lives. So we tried to figure out what we could possibly do while we were stuck at home that could generate something valuable and actionable so we could publish about it and finish and move on with our lives. And kind of the RHI genetics analytics was born out of us trying to discover and invent a way to create something actionable out of other people's data in such a way that we could create something new that hadn't been previously seen before. So what we did is we actually went online, and in the world of genetic research, since 2001, if you've published a paper where some of the work for that paper was supported by a public grant, you have to publish, whenever you publish the paper, you actually have to submit all of the raw data for the sequencing experiment. You have to publish it online as well. Because ultimately the public, aka us, paid for all of that research, so we should be able to look at that data and see if it's reproducible, real, and if we could actually get some actionable information out of that. So that was over 20 years ago now. There's been data published from these experiments. And to give you some context for these experiments, they're experiments on humans where they actually took slivers of their tissue, so they're pieces of their bodies out essentially, and sequenced them to try and understand what was going on in their disease. So it's really valuable information that you could not easily get access to again. And it's basically just sitting there online for people to look at if they choose to. But it's not really easy to look at. So that's where Em's background comes in.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Em. I also have my PhD in biomedical sciences like G, which is where we met at Temple. And essentially, my background really is in bioinformatics. So I process large amounts of genetic data and try to figure out what in the world is going on with disease. And I had the fortunate or unfortunate pleasure of being the only person at Temple Medical School who really understood how to dive all the way into that data. And so most of the time I would have people coming up to me being like, okay, how can we look at this? What is this graph? And really the best one is always, how do I open this file? It looks like garbage. And I'm like, well, you don't open that file. You put it in a program and something happens and then you get the file back. But so essentially that's where G and I got started. And when we were at home, you know, during COVID at lab, I don't know if you've noticed as I've been up here, but I am impossible to keep still. So I started going around to anyone that I knew from the PhD and helping them with their data analysis or even their yard work. And with G, we decided, okay, we're one stinking experiment away from being out of here. How in the world, given that we have absolutely no idea when we're going to be able to go back into the lab, how in the world can we still graduate? And so we went on to those public repositories and we came to the conclusion that there's hundreds of thousands of files out there of information that is essentially priceless because it's from rare diseases or people who have passed. And given that the academics in general don't necessarily know how to open the file that they're trying to analyze, there's a lot more information in those files that wasn't currently being used. And so we thought, okay, well, what we can do is we can go on to these databases, we can download this information, we'll take heart failure as our disease in question, and we'll start looking through it to see, can we find new insights about disease, new ways to treat disease, new therapies, or even can we find ways to repurpose old therapies that not only can, you know, allow us to finally graduate, but also allow us to do something that can help bring all of that research from academia, from the databases, from a place where nobody can look at it, nobody can access it, nobody can understand it, to a place where it actually can help with your day-to-day life.
So yeah, what we decided to do was basically build a pipeline that would automate the process of analyzing that data. So the first thing that we did was to prove to ourselves that maybe we could find something actionable was we pulled data from a data set that had men and women who both had the same disease. And the way that the original authors in that experiment had analyzed it was that they grouped all the healthy men and women together, and they grouped all the sick men and women together, and they compared healthy versus sick. But we said, why don't we actually take another look at this and let's split it up based on your sex, because men and women are not actually the same. Although the disease appears the same if you have this disease, you have what's called dilated cardiomyopathy, which is a type of heart failure. If you go to the emergency room, whenever they look at your heart, it's going to look exactly the same whether you're a man or a woman in terms of what that disease looks like at the physiological level. But we wanted to look at the data and see if it was the same at a genetic level. So what we did is we actually looked through, and when we did that comparison, what we found is that all of these genes that are on the left, on the green side, are the genes that were changed in the women. And on the right side, the blue, are genes that were changed in the men, and only in the men. And in the middle, that 274 is genes that were changed in both men and women that were sick. But whenever you actually take the genes that are being displayed there and you graph them by their function, which is basically what are the genes involved in? So are they involved in cell cycle or growth or scarring? What is these genes actually changing in disease? If you look at the changes in men, what we found was that all the changes, the major changes in the men had to do with changes in inflammation. But in women that had the same disease, the majority of their functions that changed had to do with cardiac contraction. So the real kicker comes when you think about how the clinical world has worked up until very recently. There were about 20 years where the FDA actually prevented the inclusion of women in clinical trials at all. So the major included group in those clinical trials was Caucasian men between the ages of 40 to 70. And as we're seeing just from this analysis here, Caucasian men between the ages of 40 and 70 have a very specific profile in that disease, which is not the same as women. And all the therapeutics that worked in those clinical trials worked because that group had the specific signature of that disease. But those therapeutics don't actually work on women, and this actually showed us why. It's not ultimately the same disease at a genetic level. So we did this example to basically prove to ourselves that what we were doing could actually provide value. And from that example, ultimately, Dad kind of overheard what we were talking about and decided that what we were doing was perhaps more interesting than even we realized, because we were at the time thinking, oh, we would do this example and we'll publish a paper about it and we'll finish our PhDs, and Em was planning to just move on and do consulting work to do that kind of analytics for anyone who had that type of data. And kind of
Well, Bob pointed out to me that maybe I did not have business knowledge given my PhD background, and maybe I was leaving some opportunity on the table, and that could be better served by joining Rajant Health. So that's essentially how G and I got here. And, so we gave this example and then we took a step back, similar to that, put a camera on a drone and look at what is genetics healthcare. And how do we actually get all the way to personalized medicine? Because people talk about personalized medicine a lot, but in the end, it's a behemoth. And there's absolutely no way that you can just all of a sudden hop and be doing personalized medicine. Because really, we don't know enough about what a human being is to be able to figure out who you, a human being, are. And so essentially what we did is we created this roadmap, which takes us from the beginning, which is, we'll talk about in a second, but the analytics website, which is essentially what we did together during the PhD. But how do we get from that kind of analysis all the way to the end? I don't want to hit you in the eyeballs, to personalized medicine. So we thought of a lot of different things along the way. And we, as some of you may know, Malvern doesn't necessarily have walls that go all the way up to the ceiling. So we happened to be G&I in an office, and on the other side of that wall was FOAD. And so when FOAD was in a meeting talking about AI, we were also in that meeting talking about AI. And when we were talking about genetics, FOAD was also in that meeting talking about genetics. And so, it sounded kind of cool. I'd only ever heard of AI as like a 2-letter word that, I don't know, Will Smith did in iRobot, and I have no idea anything other than that. So we started doing these back and forth lessons where FOAD would teach us AI for an hour a day, and then we would teach him genetics for an hour a day. And the first thing that came out of it was a compression algorithm. And so the reason that this is cool is because nobody knew that genetics analysis would get this large. And so by 2025, the expected size of genetics data is to be somewhere around 40 exabytes. And so the data is growing much faster than our storage is. So if we want to even begin to jump into the world of personalized medicine, we have to be able to handle the size of the data and store it. And so, as FOAD's first foray into genetics, he started conceptualizing this compression algorithm, which I will admit to thinking was absolutely crazy at the time, and happily I was proved wrong. And so he and the rest of the genetics team back over there started working on this, and we can now compress genetics data to 3 times smaller than what's on the market right now as the mainstream compression algorithm. And so as we continue down that path of doing the research necessary to get to personalized medicine, we add in things like, how do you go back to all of those big data sets and bring all of that data together and still get statistical significance so you can understand disease? How do we begin to look at the demographics that are specific to each one of us and figure out what's going on in your specific form of disease? And then how do you begin to look at what does disease look like and what's really driving that disease so that when you're taking a drug, it's not a Band-Aid for a symptom, it is a cure for what is ailing you. And then move a step further to looking at how do we predict that even faster so you can know before you feel sick that you are sick so you don't have to experience that disease at all. And so essentially each one of those gray boxes up there is an AI algorithm idea to handle each one of those different questions. But obviously, we all like to eat, and science is really great, but it doesn't always, get you where you need to go in the bank. So on the way to all of those things, what we've done in the blue is we've come up with some kind of a report or a product that can go out to an academic, to a pharmaceutical company, so that they can start to capitalize on some of the things that we found, because also it's a massive idea. And to actually start to create the change, we need those kind of groups, the pharmaceutical industries, the academics, to help us really take that out into the world.
Yeah, so a big driver, I would say, from the boss man is that while we're thinking about all these long-term plans, we really need to be focusing on ways to make money on the way to making money. So while we have 5 years of planning ahead of us, we also are thinking about how we can productize pieces of this along the way and pay ultimately so that we can all eat. So the first product is actually what we're showing you here. It's an analytics website that essentially allows you to make the kind of conclusions that we were able to make about our first example, and it does it all in an automated fashion. So to give you some context for why this matters, in the world that we came from of academic research, what you're seeing here would actually take weeks to generate. So really in academia, if you want to change a graph, you actually have to go into the code, change the parameters, and rerun it. So we basically created an automated way for people that don't understand how to write code, but they do care about biology, to just submit all of those files from their sequencing experiments, set up the comparison parameters, press go, and they get to the point where they can actually figure out what happened in their experiment, did their treatment work, and what should they actually do next. So we actually already sold it. We had our first customer a couple weeks ago, which was really exciting for RHI, some external validation. It's a real good first step into the world of eventually standing on our own 2 feet. But we go live with the actual version of this website on July 1st. So we have a busy year planned for us. And then many other products to come out as time goes by. But this is kind of the foundational step for RHI genetics.
Yeah, and the cool thing about this is all of these graphs and the website service itself can be reapplied to whatever kind of data you want to analyze. So it can work for Mutus. But yeah, so that this can also be applied to any kind of data that we're doing, any kind of the mining data, the tracking data that Mutu has. So it really, it seems kind of off the beaten path for us to be doing genetics, given the wearable and all of the tracking data. But it really comes back into this integrated system where we can look at every aspect of your life and we can feed all of that data into the roadmap when we start thinking about demographics and your medical history. And we can use it all to really start to understand what life looks like for you and what the world is doing to you so that we can understand your day-to-day life and your disease state. So
I promise there's just one slide. Sorry, 2, maybe 3. But all I want to say is that we have a lot of ongoing R&D efforts. I just want to give shout outs to people who are actually working on stuff like this. I'm not going to name names. I'm just going to say the team has been working on, discovering new uses for drugs. We've been working on our own calibration and sensor fusion algorithms to clean up the data in a proprietary way. And we're also, this is a video, we're using the robot and cool things like that. And we're also developing our own in-house tracking system, leveraging some of the tools that MeshTracer and some of our other tracking partners have been developing and trying to create a unified solution for tracking indoor, outdoor.
Yeah, in a large nutshell, that's what we're up to at RHI. So, well, open for any questions now or later, so we can all go eat lunch and just find us. We're in Malvern. Turn left when you come inside the door. We're the whole hallway. So, thanks guys for your time.